Congratulations, you are now hackable animals.
Guys, this is Pfizer's website from 2015. Check it out. They hired and worked with Dr. Ido Bachelet to work with nanorobotics. Pfizer in 2015. Let me introduce you to Dr. Ido Bachelet.
And I'll show you this syringe, which I brought from my lab. So this syringe has inside it 1,000 billion robots. So these robots are each 50 nanometers long, which as you can see in this slide under the microscope. 50 nanometers is about 2,000 times thinner than the thickness of your hair. So to carry out medical and therapeutic procedures in our body with the utmost precision, we need to be able to control molecules. Controlling molecules is a very simple challenge in modern science and technology. Okay, let's think, for example, about the class of molecules we know as drugs. But there are things we can do with drugs. For example, we can put the drugs in particles from which they diffuse slowly. We can attach the drug to a carrier, which takes someplace. But this is not real control. When we're thinking about control, we're thinking about processes in real world around us, and what happens when we want to control a process that's beyond our capabilities as humans. We just connect this process to a computer and let the computer control this process for us. Okay? So that's what we do. But obviously, this cannot be done with drugs because the drugs are so much smaller than computers as we know them. The computer is in fact so much bigger, it's about 100 million times bigger than any drug molecule. Our nanobots, which were in this syringe, solve this problem because they are in fact computers the size of molecules. And they can interact with molecules, and they can control molecules directly. So this is how the nanorobot looks like. It's built from DNA, as you can see. And it resembles a clamshell in which you can put cargo. You can load anything you want, starting from small molecules, drugs, proteins, enzymes, even nanoparticles. Virtually any function that molecules can carry out can be loaded into the nanobot, and the nanobot can be programmed to turn on and off these functions at certain places and at certain times. This is how it controls molecules. And so we have robots that can switch from off to on and off again. We can control their kinetics of transition. We can control which payload becomes accessible at which time point.
The 248-page patent for the Moderna technology that was administered to people in the COVID shots was filed in 2020. The patent lists several embodiments or variations of this technology. And while we don't know who got what embodiment, we know that several different batch numbers were deployed, and some were far more deadlier than others. According to the Moderna patent, this technology contains self-assembled nanoparticles, and in certain variations, these nanoparticles can be used for the controlled release of compounds once they are in the human body. These lipid nanoparticles are encapsulated into a polymer hydrogel, a controlled release coating that includes polyvinyls. This has been verified by Mihalcea and Clifford Carnicom's research. In a 2013 TEDMed talk, Dr. Ido Bachelet says that these nanorobots have already been successfully developed in Israel, and that they can be injected into the human body with a basic syringe. He shows an image of what they look like, and they appear to be the same structures that the fifth column found in their research, and claimed was powered by 5G, which was confirmed by Dr. Bachelet.
My team developed nanorobots that carry antennas. These antennae are made from metal nanoparticles. Now, the antenna enabled the nanobots to respond to externally applied electromagnetic fields. So these versions of nanobots can actually be activated with the press of a button on a joystick.
In the following video, it is being discussed by developers in 2015.
The nanorobot we designed and fabricated is a machine that can be programmed to autonomously recognize target cells and deliver payloads to those cells.
The basic idea is to make a cage or a basket that protects a fragile or toxic or precious payload and only releases it when it's at the right moment.
The nanorobot that we designed actually looks like an open-ended barrel or a clamshell.
For decades, those with eyes to see have been aware of chemtrails in our skies. And for decades, we were called conspiracy theorists. But in 2016, while serving as director of the CIA, John Brennan admitted that chemtrails are real at the Council on Foreign Relations.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly.
In 2007, it was announced that nano-sized particles, known as smart dust, can be dispersed over the battlefield via aerial spraying. The military has contracted several multinational corporations to develop wearable biosensors. Biosensors and smart dust can become something known as body dust that can spread inside the human body as an active network, capable to provide telemetry from inside the body for the use of monitoring humans. There is a patent for using polyethylene glycol derivatives as a way to modify the weather, the same substances used in the COVID-19 lipid nanoparticles. These polymers can be integrated with biosensors and soft robotics for smart materials, materials that can be modified by external stimuli. Soft robotics is a subfield of robotics that utilizes compliant materials rather than rigid ones, such as the hydrogels found in the experimental COVID shots. DuPont is manufacturing elastomers for fast-moving soft robots and have developed the fastest DEA-driven soft robots ever reported, designed for biosensing, interacting with biological entities, and actuating on a cellular level. In her recent article, Smart Dust, Biosensors, Polymers for Geoengineering, and the Multinational Corporations that Manufacture Them, Dr. Anna Maria Mihalcea points out that these are the transhumanist technologies that will be giving AI enormous amounts of data, as Bill Gates said, to understand 100 trillion organisms. She also points out the important fact that the elastomers being fabricated by DuPont for this soft robot technology are made of the exact same chemicals found when analyzing the messagens, a compound that displays liquid crystal properties, found in targeted individuals. And they appear to be the same compounds she found in the blood of the vaxxed, as well as the blood of the unvaxxed, which appear to be the same structures used as part of electronic circuitry in self-assembly nanotechnology. Smart Dust is a system of tiny microelectromechanical systems that can detect light, temperature, vibration, magnetism, or chemicals. They are operated wirelessly on a computer network, can be used for medical or military surveillance purposes, and can be dispersed through the air via chemtrails, which would greatly go unnoticed by the sleeping masses who have come to accept them. When combined with the Messagen soft robot technology, which has already been found in several blood samples of unwitting victims, they could create a means of monitoring and controlling the entire human population. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese. For decades, Ray Kurzweil has been an unofficial spokesman for the transhumanist movement. And in 2008, he said that humans would become infused with nanorobots, which would vastly improve the human body.
If you go out even to 2045, that's only 4 decades from now, most of our intelligence, of our human civilization will be non-biological. We're going to put this inside our bodies and brains. So we're going to become machines, but not, and if you say that, then people go, well, I don't want to become a machine, because they're thinking of machines as we knew them from the 19th century, which were much lesser than humans, and machines today are still lesser than humans. I'm talking about a new type of machine that's actually greater more subtle, more supple, more intelligent, more creative, more beautiful than humans.
In 2010, he interviewed Robert Freitas on the future of nanotechnology, who said that nanorobots could cure aging and death.
Medical nanorobots really have the potential to extend human life more or less indefinitely. So what's your view about the role of death, and do we need death?
Death is something that is an end. It's an end to life. It's an end to progress. It's an end to thoughts. It's something to be cured. Aging is a disease. It's a curable disease. Nanomedicine is the cure for that disease.
He said that this technology is expected to be deployed by 2020, and that laws will be in place to protect the public from its misuse.
I expect that by the time nanorobots are deployed, which will be sometime perhaps in the 2020s or the 2030s, we will have a whole set of laws in place, regulations. There will be things you can and cannot do.
The laws were never put in place, but the technology was patented and deployed to billions of people without their knowledge in 2020. We know this because several independent labs have confirmed the presence of this nanotechnology in the COVID vaccines. And Bill Gates recently admitted to this as well.
Making the mRNA is really easy and really cheap, and that's the magic of this thing. But there's no doubt in the next 5 years, we just need to mess around. There's a lot of lipid nanoparticles, and some are very self-assembling.
Self-assembly and self-replication seem to be the same technology when it comes to nanorobots. And this was considered to be the greatest danger involved with the use of this technology.
Self-replication causes disease. Nanorobots are inherently much stronger than biological systems being built of diamondoid. So if they self-replicate, that disease, quote unquote, could be even a tougher problem than biological disease. So first of all, what's the feasibility of self-replication in the nanotechnology world?
As a general principle, you do not want to put self-replicating nanorobots inside the human body. I suppose not everybody agrees with me on that, but that is the way I think that we can best guarantee safety. If the nanorobots are able to replicate inside the human body, that means they are using some component of the human body as food, and we don't want them to be doing that.
In his 1986 book, Engines of Creation, Kim Eric Drexler wrote about what he termed the gray goo scenario, a hypothetical catastrophic event caused by out-of-control, self-replicating nanotechnology, which consumes the biomass of the host. And this is exactly what independent researchers are finding. It explains the large, so-called blood clots being found in the dead. And it's spreading. Evidence shows that the vaxxed are shedding this to the unvaxxed.
How do we prevent a terrorist or someone who's bent on destruction from creating such a self-replicating system?
There will be some terrorist acts because that's what humans do, unfortunately. So what we're going to be needing in this era of nanofactories is something equivalent to the fire department. Hopefully the incidents will be very few, but we will have an emergency regime which is set up to deal with that type of event.
But the event is worldwide, and there is no agency set up to put out this fire. Our governments are not even discussing the problem, and the perpetrators are planning a second round of nanobot deployment with another fake pandemic. If we the people cannot unite and stand together now, then what exactly are we? Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese. The following report is from Dr. Anna Maria Mihalcea's recent article entitled Hydrogel Platform Enables Versatile Data Encryption and Decryption. The building blocks of hydrogels are being found in the COVID vaccine, and hydrogels are being found in the blood of both the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. They are the so-called blood clots that are being found around the world, and these hydrogels can now be programmed, encrypted, and decrypted. According to Mihalcea, they are the substrate of the brain-computer interface and the primary method of fusing humans with machines, as she described by referencing MIT research in the article Hydrogel Interfaces for Merging Humans and Machines. Elements which Mihalcea and Clifford Carnicom found with near-infrared spectroscopy in the blood of the unvaccinated exposed to shedding and environmental contamination include hydrogel plastics such as polyenes, vinyl, nylon, Kevlar, and spider silk proteins, as well as other nanotechnology signatures such as silicone and sulfur. This technology hijacks methyl groups, which are needed to detoxify and create glutathione in the body. Hydrogels used for the encrypted programmable technology include polyvinyl alcohol and polycaprolactone. Both of these hydrogels are listed as stealth nanoparticles in the Moderna patent for lipid nanoparticle composition. This suggests that not only those who received the shot have this hydrogel encryption technology in their bodies, but also those who have experienced shedding and environmental contamination, which is just about everyone. These hydrogels are known to be programmable and encrypted. This technology can behave as brain storage. It can store memories and visual information in an individual's brain. And it can be chemically induced to be securely encrypted and decrypted, allowing for the secure recording and storage of confidential visual information. This provides a platform for secure financial transactions, which is a requirement for a digital ID. MIT researchers have discussed how this very same technology can be used to fuse humans with machines. And while they've had problems working it out in the past, a recent paper has announced they found success using the very same elements found in both the blood of the vaccinated and unvaccinated by Mihalcea and Carnicom. In a lecture by Professor Sakrat Khizroev at the University of Miami, it is discussed how advanced materials can be used for interfacing machines and the human brain. He references a research project funded by DARPA, wherein magnetic nanoparticles are key to this technology. Mihalcea has published research that shows how the COVID shots alter torsion fields in the body and produce magnetism. A review by the RAND Corporation, Brain-Computer Interfaces, U.S. Military Applications and Implications, discussed the convergence of human with machine. In an interview with Big Pharma whistleblower Karen Kingston, Kingston discusses this self-assembly nanotechnology and how the spike protein is an engineered device, triggered by electromagnetic frequency, and how the quantum dots are gene editing technology. This nanotechnology appears to be distributed via chemtrails, the food and water supply, medications, and in all of the scheduled vaccines for children. It has been found by multiple scientists in the blood of both the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And the fact that this widespread technology is being ignored, while the topic of mRNA is being pushed into the mainstream, is of great concern. Mihalcea has shown that the new protocols being sold to the public as a way of reversing the negative effect of the COVID shots have no effect on these hydrogels, and it would seem that well over 1 billion people are infected with them. While many are talking about an archaic implanted computer chip, it seems that the latest breakthrough technology has already been deployed without anyone's consent. The situation almost seems hopeless, but where there is a will, there is a way. And now is not the time to hide our head in the sand. The human body is miraculous, and our potential is endless. The more people addressing this dire situation, the better chances we have of finding a remedy. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese. Emotionally, it is easy to dismiss the work of Dr. Anna Maria Mihalcea, for it is very disturbing. But her work is shown through scientific testing and backed up by government and NGO documentation. And the evidence shows that humanity has already been infected with cutting-edge surveillance nanotechnology. This is a follow-up to my last report on Dr. Mihalcea's hydrogel research. New research shows that those who received the COVID shots emit a fluorescent orange glow in their faces that is visible under a UV light of 365 nanometers. and those who have been exposed to shedding emit this glow around their nose. After his wife was coerced into getting the COVID shot, PhD Justin Coy began his own research. He found that the more shots a person received, the more they glowed under UV light. The glow can be seen initially around the nose, and over time spreads throughout the entire face and into the neck. After a hot shower, filaments are expelled through the skin of the vaxxed, and these filaments also emit a glow under UV light. These filaments not only glow, but they have been shown to move on their own in spastic movements. And they are also attracted to people. In videos, they can be seen trying to latch onto a finger. And when a person who has received the shot has dry skin, these expelled filaments will become airborne. This could explain how shedding occurs from the vaxxed to the unvaxxed. The Pfizer trial document stated that an unvaxxed individual in close proximity to someone who's been vaxxed can be infected by inhalation and skin contact. In 2008, a biological nanotechnology pesticide designed to kill the brown moth in the state of California was deployed and appears to have included the same sort of fluorescent invisible microdye that we see in the scientific research. Dr. Hildegard Staninger tested individuals exposed to this nanotech pesticide and found that a glow could be detected in their eyes under UV light. Dr. Staninger called this the Eye of Horus effect due to its similar appearance, and claimed it was due to the use of fluorescent thiocyanate in the pesticide, which according to the literature would have been used to track the effectiveness of the dispersal. The idea has been around for decades. The Institute for National Security Studies' Non-Lethal Weapons Terms and References, published in 1997, discusses an invisible infrared dye which is visible under UV light so that rioters can be later identified. Justin Coy points out how the genetic code for luciferase, a bioluminescent enzyme found in nature, is included in the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, along with SV40, which could theoretically allow the luciferase to be written into the genetics of the recipient. Coy proposes that this could be what is causing the vaxxed to glow under UV light. The TRACE Act, H.R. 6666, COVID-19 Testing, Research, and Contacting Everyone Act, was introduced in May of 2020. The bill authorizes the Centers for Disease Control to contact, trace, and monitor the population. In late 2020 and early 2021, people all over the world started noticing purple streetlights, which is the color of UV light. The quantum dot tattoo research funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation provided a way of detecting whether or not a person was vaccinated by including fluorescent medical information in the vaccines. Invisible near-infrared tattoos that would imprint beneath the skin to later be read by customized smartphones. In the scientific literature on quantum dot research, these fluorescent medical information tattoos have a similar appearance to the faces of those infected by the vax under UV light. You may or may not believe in biblical prophecy, but it seems clear that the ones running this diabolical program are using it as their playbook. From Revelation 13, and the second beast required all people small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark. But never forget, we still have free will. Greg Reese reporting. Dr. Charles Morgan, former CIA and consultant for the U.S. military on neurological sciences, spoke to cadets at West Point in 2018 about the current state of technology. He briefed the cadets on experiments from 2013 where humans were given neural implants that allowed them to control prosthetic arms with their thoughts. Experiments where one person can control another person's hands by just wearing an EEG cap.
The person on the receiving end described the sensation as rather odd. He said, "I didn't know anything until I saw my hand beginning to move." But the really fun part was that you're taking over somebody else's physical body with the mind of another human. So what do you think would be the next step?
Experiments where information is transmitted from one mind to another, and experiments where memories are erased. Dr. Morgan admits they have the technology to target an individual person.
But you can engineer anything. You can engineer a unique thing that would only kill one person in the world.
And are working on the ability to erase the memories of any human they choose. Their biggest challenge 5 years ago was being able to interface with the hippocampus without the use of physical wires. And this is most likely one of the motivating factors for the deployment of the experimental COVID shots. Using dark field microscopy, Dr. Anna Maria Mihalcea has captured in great detail what the scientific literature describes as effective technologies that exist today. Technologies such as quantum dots. Quantum dots are nanotechnology with the ability to organize, operate, communicate, and build structures within the blood. They do so with a tunable photoluminescence that can be programmed to dictate various tasks via optical communication. The description and images displayed in the scientific literature compared to what Mihalcea's dark field microscopy has captured are the same. You can see the quantum dots blinking in different colors, acting as the artificial intelligence directing the self-assembly around them. Bubbles are created within the blood that act as construction sites. Within these construction bubbles, the quantum dots organize the various materials into self-assembly. These technologies are being found in both the blood of the vaccinated and in the blood of the unvaccinated. Depending on what materials are needed, the quantum dots will trigger them into self-assembly. The COVID vaccines are full of rare and heavy metals to make all manner of nanotechnology. But it seems as if almost everyone is infected with some sort of nanotech. According to several research teams, everyone's blood seems to contain the materials required to produce the filaments and the lattice work for this technology. Blood samples that appear to be healthy have been completely transformed by applying a mere 10 milliamps of electric current for 2 hours. And it looks as if we may have been infected by the chemtrails. Morgellons disease was first reported in 2002. It's when synthetic fibers or filaments are growing in a person's body. It has been theorized for decades that this was being spread via chemtrails. And under a microscope, it appears to be the same filaments that people today are calling blood clots, and what the scientific journals call self-assembled hydrogels. According to Dane Wigington from geoengineeringwatch.org, nanoparticles are being sprayed worldwide. The good news is that Dr. Mihalcea's research has found a remedy. The iron in the infected blood has been oxidized to a 3+ state. And by taking antioxidants, one is able to dissolve these filament clots. She has found that EDTA chelation therapy will remedy infected blood within 3 days, and megadosing vitamin C also seems to work. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
Humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. Free will, that's over.
That's over.
Over. Today, we have the technology to hack human beings on a massive scale. Yeah, I mean, everything is being digitalized. Everything is being monitored. In this time of crisis, you have to follow science. It's often said that you should never allow a good crisis to go to waste, because a crisis is an opportunity to also do good reforms that in normal times people will never agree to. But in a crisis, you see, we have no chance. So let's do it. Surveillance. People could look back in 100 years and identify the coronavirus epidemic as the moment when a new regime of surveillance took over, especially surveillance under the skin, which I think is maybe the most important development of the 21st century, is this ability to hack human beings, to go under the skin, collect biometric data, analyze it, and understand people better than they understand themselves. This, I believe, is maybe the most important event of the 21st century. By hacking organisms, elites may gain the power to re-engineer the future of life itself. Because once you can hack something, you can usually also engineer it.
Natural selection is replaced by intelligent design. The era of inorganic life is now beginning.
In the coming decades, AI and biotechnology will give us godlike abilities to re-engineer life and even to create completely new life forms. We are about to enter a new era of inorganic life shaped by intelligent design. Our intelligent design. Maybe in a couple of decades, when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian machines, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin. Because really we haven't seen anything yet. I think that the big process that's happening right now in the world is hacking human beings, the ability to hack humans, to understand deeply what's happening within you, what makes you go. And for that, the most important data is not what you read and who you meet and what you buy, it's what's happening inside your body. So we had these two big revolutions, the computer science revolution, or the infotech revolution, and the revolution in the biological sciences. And they are still separate, but they are about to merge. They are merging around, I would say, the biometric sensor. It's the thing, it's the gadget, it's the technology that converts biological data into digital data that can be analyzed by computers. And having the ability to really monitor people under the skin, this is the biggest game changer of all. Because this is the key for getting to know people better than they know themselves. I often give the example from my own personal life that I realized I was gay only when I was 21. And I keep thinking about the time when I was 15, 16, how could I have missed it? You know, something so important about myself should have been obvious, but I didn't know. Now, today, or in 5 or 10 years, any algorithm of Microsoft or Amazon or the government would be able to know such a thing when I'm 12 or 13, just by monitoring what's happening in my body, what's happening to my eyes when let's say I see a boy and a girl walking on the beach. Where do my eyes focus? So this is the crucial revolution, and COVID is critical because this is what convinces people to accept, to legitimize total biometric surveillance. If we want to stop this epidemic, we need not just to monitor people, we need to monitor what's happening under their skin, their body temperature. Like we walked in here, we had to go through a body temperature test.
Even in Israel, it has become a national security issue, right?
So again, I'm not against surveillance. It's an important tool, especially to fight epidemics. The question is, again, who is doing it and how? If you give it to the security service to do it, that's extremely dangerous. Yes, now they're using it to see whether you have the coronavirus. But exactly the same technology can determine what you think about the government. You know, anger is a biological phenomena just like disease. It's not some spiritual thing out there. It's a biological pattern in your body. With this kind of surveillance, I mean, you watch the big president, the big leader, gives a speech on television. The television could be monitoring you and knowing whether you're angry or not, just by analyzing the cues, the biological cues coming from your body. So now people are now watching us online, all over the world, this conversation. Now, maybe even right now, the people who are watching us are being watched and analyzed. And the thing is, it's not just you're now watching this. The thing is, we know that you're watching this, and we also know how you feel. Are you angry about what you hear? Are you frightened? Are you bored? This is the kind of power that Stalin didn't have. When Stalin gave a speech, everybody, of course, clapped their hand and smiled. Now, how do you know what they really think about Stalin? It's very difficult. You can't have a KGB agent following everybody all the time. Even if you do it, he's just watching your outside behavior. He doesn't really know what's happening in your mind. But in 10 years, the future Stalins of the 21st century, they could be watching the minds, the brains of all the population all the time. And also they will have the computing power to analyze all that. It's not just having an agent following everybody all the time. The agent in Stalin's days writes a paper report, and you have these millions of paper reports piling up in Moscow. Somebody needs to read them, to analyze them. That's impossible. Now you don't need human agents. You don't need human analyzers. You just have a lot of sensors and an AI which analyzes it, and that's it. You have the worst totalitarian regime in history. And COVID is important because COVID legitimizes some of the crucial steps, even in democratic countries.
A brand new study using an extremely powerful microscope looked at the contents of 4 different COVID vaccines. In this study, the authors claim to have found artificial nanostructures, which they refer to as self-assembling nanostructures, which look like this. Now, these were only found in the mRNA-containing ones, and the shapes range from crystals, filaments, spirals, all the way to nanotubes. They found that the shape of these changed over time and were particularly responsive to external electromagnetic fields. But before you get excited, there are some serious problems with this study. First up, there's no publicly available ORCID record for this researcher, so we don't know if she's published anything in the past and what training she has. Next, she's a gynecologist, and whilst that might not necessarily be a problem, we really want this study being done by molecular biologists who have the resources and the tools at their disposal to be able to make sure this was a valid study. Next up, the lab isn't registered from anywhere that I can see, and therefore we have no way of knowing that it's actually a sterile environment. What this means is that the things that we're looking at right here could simply be artifacts. With that in mind, whilst I'm not a scientist, I think we have to be very, very cautious about these results. But even if we discard the study as bunk, you might not know that there are numerous other accounts. We're talking like more than 40 or 50 individual accounts of scientists with genuine expertise in the field who have found something very similar. They found 3D nanostructures in the shots, and some authors have speculated or said that they closely resemble carbon nanofibers and might be graphene oxide. At this point, guys, with all of the numerous findings, I am convinced that they have put some kind of nanotechnology in at least some of the batches. The question is, why? Since graphene oxide was definitely not on the ingredients list, you might be wondering what the hell it was doing in there. And you might be amazed to hear what the science actually says about this. Let's just say that reality is much stranger than fiction these days. And if you don't believe me, just check this out. It turns out that scientists have been working with graphene oxide for a very long time, particularly in the context of micro and nano robots. Now, you might be wondering, what are micro and nano robots? Well, these are basically tiny little machines, pieces of technology. They're invisible to the naked eye, you cannot see this, but these things can be implanted into the body either by injection, inhalation, or even through the gut. Now, they can be programmed to achieve certain effects. This can be on organs, on tissues, or even specific cells. So for drug delivery, for altering gene expression, they have to be driven or powered by some kind of external energy source. This can be body heat, it can be UV light, but a lot of the research is looking at external magnetic fields to power these things. And they can be used as what are called biosensors, so they can receive information from external sources or from internal sources, and then they can transmit that information. Think of it a little bit like a chip or like a tiny Wi-Fi router which is in the cells, and it can literally absorb radiation and transmit information to external sources as well. And on this topic, you can see from this paper, these researchers recently developed a remote controlled probe which was able to target specific cells. And it just so happens that graphene oxide is one of the key materials that they use for these nano-type robots. The field of research is more widely known as nanorobotics. It forms the basis of what is now called the Internet of Bio-Nano Things. You think of this as essentially a form of transhumanism. The Internet of Bio-Nano Things is envisioned to be a heterogeneous network of nanoscale and biological devices, so-called bio-nano things, communicating via non-conventional means. So this is molecular communications in non-conventional environments, e.g. inside the human body. The main objective of this emerging networking framework is to enable direct and seamless interaction with biological systems for accurate sensing and control of their dynamics in real time. That means using nanorobots to control living systems, i.e. the human body. Okay? Of course, this new frontier of technology has been framed as a medical breakthrough which will revolutionize treatment of chronic disease. However, it's important to realize that this hasn't just garnered interest from within the medical field. In fact, the key players who are funding this research include the likes of DARPA and other military intelligence agencies. In fact, they've been talking about this for years. So back in 2006, there was a book that was published titled Military Nanotechnology, Potential Applications for Preventive Arms Control. And let's see what they say. So there's a section here, 436, Operations Against Biological Systems and Humans. So living systems can be influenced, damaged, or killed using military nanotechnology by a variety of different mechanisms. They talk about the various ways in which they can potentially employ this type of technology against human beings. So it's framed as though it's in the context of military opponents. However, we know that they're likely using this against the general population. New action from outside by masses of small systems, so clogging of the nose, mouth, covering of the eyes and face, mechanical blocking of the fingers, arms, legs, creating slippery layers on the ground. Okay, you can see how this would be used in warfare. Now get this, traditional or new chemical or biological agents, including application by injection. Interesting. Penetration into the human body with microscopic action. In organs, mechanical damage, clogging of arteries, inducing their contraction. And then it even goes to say about the cells themselves. So in cells, changing of metabolism or DNA. In nerve cells and the brain, get this, interference with perception, thinking, or motor activity. Control of general mood, pain sensations, control of thinking, right? This is what they were talking about back in 2006. Taking this one step further, check out this recent white paper, which was published by some kind of an employee or an advisor, maybe, to NATO. It's called Cognitive Warfare. Now, he talks about this kind of new frontier of warfare, which is utilizing nanotechnology as a means of accomplishing that. So leveraging neuroscience and technology to achieve military effects is not new, but the revolution and the convergence of nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technology, and cognitive science, including advances in genomics, has the potential for dual-use technology development. So he says, a wide range of military applications, such as improving the performance of soldiers. They want to make like augmented super soldiers. We know that they want to do this. Developing new weapons such as directed energy weapons are already discussed. The use of neuroscience and technology for military and intelligence purposes is realistic and represents a clear and present concern. They're already doing this, guys. Products of neuroscientific and neurotechnological research can be utilized to affect the following: memory, learning, cognitive speed, wake and sleep cycles, fatigue and alertness, impulse control, mood, anxiety and self-perception, decision-making, trust and empathy, and movement and performance. He goes on to say, in military warfare, modifying these functions can be utilized to mitigate aggression and foster cognitions and emotions of affiliation or passivity. Induce morbidity, disability or suffering, and neutralize potential opponents or incur mortality. So in other words, the military have been actively in pursuit of finding ways not only to change people's physiology, but to change their perception, their emotions, their cognition, their ways of feeling and behaving. Like I said, they framed it in the context of warfare, right? But what about civil disobedience? People who do not agree or do not comply with the system. Okay, what makes us think that they would not be employing this against people who are considered dissident against the system? Now, we know the USA has a long history of using biological and chemical agents as experiments against their population. There's a long history of that. That is factual. Now, we also know that they've had access to beaming type EMF technology for a long time. This can and probably has also been used against the people, for various reasons in the past. And what we can see that scientists have been working on is these types of nanorobots, which we know can affect cell function, which can release drugs, which can release hormones, which can affect neurotransmitter systems, which can potentially target specific regions, specific cells. What's to say that they're not going to target specific regions of the brain? Well, we know that this stuff exists already. We know that there are studies looking at remote control probes. You can expose these probes to an external electromagnetic field and govern or direct its function inside the body. That is insane. So this isn't just some crazy conspiracy. This is like at the cutting edge of scientific research. It's just you need to know where to look. We know that the military industrial complex have been funding this research. They've been looking into how you can implement this in the context of warfare. But if we put 2 and 2 together, and then we also factor in all of the abundance of evidence that there were these nanostructures which have been found in vaccines, whether this new study is completely bunk or not, we know that there are numerous other clinicians, scientists, medical doctors who have done similar experiments and found a very similar thing. They have supposed that this is probably graphene oxide, and we also know that graphene oxide is used for nano robots, right? It's used as a semiconductor or as part of the structure of these nanorobots to make them conductive and make them able to receive and transmit information. So if we take all of this stuff together, I don't think it's that much of a stretch to consider the possibility that maybe at some point in some of the batches, they have implanted this technology and it's being used as some kind of an experiment. Now, some people will say it's about depopulation. However, I'm not necessarily sure that I agree with that. Whilst I do think there are genuine eugenicists who are making the decisions, I don't think that the COVID vaccines were very effective as a means of depopulation. A recent study over the past 3 years found only 32 million excess deaths. Now, the COVID vaccine is terrible, don't get me wrong, but as a means of depopulation, well, 32 million versus 7 billion, it's not very good. So either these people are wholly incompetent, which I don't doubt, but still, or there's something else going on with this nanotechnology. I think it might be being used to influence behavior or influence cognition, thinking, emotion, physiology in some way. And I suspect that it might be responsive to some kind of external electromagnetic field. I suspect that these kind of implants or this technology means that these groups of people can be controlled or influenced in some way, physiologically, psychologically, emotionally, perhaps to respond to certain engineered events in coming times. That's possible. Kind of triggered in some way to do certain things. I think that's possible. Or react in certain ways. That's also possible. I'm open to lots of different ideas. I mean, even the fact that they went ahead and did this is freaking insane. But it seems as though the evidence is lining up and suggesting that they did do this. So we're just going to have to wait and see how things play out. But at this point, it's all speculation.
Hello, my name is Dr. Anna Maria Mihalcea. The purpose of this video is to draw attention to the crimes against humanity as related to the human blood. I have been investigating this crime, the self-assembling nanotechnology, the synthetic biology now for the last couple of years, and have compiled a library of documentation. My research, in collaboration with Clifford Carnicom, as well as others like Dr. David Nixon, have provided a tremendous amount of coherent and cohesive evidence that I would like to share here in an overview. My Substack, Anna Mihalcea, MD, PhD, .substack.com, has almost 250 articles that are documenting these crimes and explaining the technological and scientific background information that would explain this, as well as many, many interviews, many research articles that we have done in regards to experimentation as related to the human blood. So I would like to now share my screen and start this presentation. And what I would like to show is evidence of crimes against humanity via the method of dark field live blood analysis. First, I need to explain what certain terminologies mean. So self-assembly hydrogels are now a substance that is used in medical applications and technological applications. So it's a network of polymers, and polymers self-assemble to form something that's similar to plastic. And this is really what we found, for example, in regards to the clots that have been shown by the embalmer Richard Hirschman. So they are able to create biosensing devices, electronic devices. They're used in drug delivery, specifically the lipid nanoparticle technology in the Pfizer supposed mRNA bioweapon. That's really a hydrogel. Polyethylene glycol can be used as a hydrogel. SM-102 is a component of hydrogel, which is found in Moderna. And so this shows that the hydrogels can really self-assemble from a nano size, a billionth of a meter that we cannot see with an optical microscope, to extremely large sizes. I was sent a blood clot by Richard Hirschman that wasn't blood, and that was 33 inches long. So this material has been investigated by Mike Adams, and he found self-assembling polymers with metals consistent with also all of our findings. So what I want to discuss here is there have been physicians in the freedom movement who provide a lot of disinformation, saying that what we're seeing is salt and sugar crystals, and that's simply not true. They have not reviewed the literature. Hydrogel has been used to create microchips for biosensing applications, and this is an article that shows this. 26 teams around the world, there's more now, had evaluated the contents of the vials. And what is important to understand is that in the United States, for example, it's illegal to look at the vials because they are classified as a weapon. So they have dual purpose application that can be civilian as well as a military application. And so anybody who's looking at the vials could potentially be prosecuted. This is the case around the world. And so it was very challenging for many of us to really evaluate what was in these shots. However, many brave individuals have done so, and they found RNA was sequenced from some vials. There were vials that had no molecules of life, no phosphorus and no nitrogen, which means that there was no mRNA in them. There was RNA sequenced from some vials, but they were not conforming to labels. So, for example, the European Medicine Commission discussed that they were truncated, there were fragments of RNA, and most of them did not have the appropriate size that it would take to create the mRNA to create a spike protein, which is the story that we've been told. There was DNA and protein impurities present and many different heavy metals. So cesium, barium, cobalt, iron, chromium, titanium, cerium, gadolinium, aluminum, silicon, sulfur, thulium, and antimony were found. This is not the first time that so-called vaccines have been filled with undisclosed metals, but in fact, the nanopathologist Antonetta Gatti has published an analysis of 44 childhood vaccines, all of which were filled with different metals. And the weapons expert Mark Steele explains that the metals are a form of wetware. So they are used for facial recognition, satellite reconnaissance, and monitoring of individuals. It is known since 2006, the military has had the ability to monitor individuals from space, and based on the metal contents in their body, determine whether or not they were vaccinated or not. I'm a certified chelation practitioner. I detoxify people of these metals. They have substantial adverse health effects, neurologically, neurocognitively, accelerated aging, cancers, autoimmune diseases, all of which can be caused by them. Large structures were found by many teams within the vials as well as the blood, and these were like particles, crystals, filaments, fibers, ribbon, and self-assembly and movement and apparent intelligent design were seen. Graphene oxide is a component of the vials. As we know from the Pfizer document, they use graphene oxide and gold to create the spike protein that is then enveloped in a hydrogel capsule. So this is what has been found as a broad overview. This is the first time I saw the vial content. So I became friends with Dr. David Nixon in Australia, and one day during a Zoom call, he asked me if I wanted to take a look. And when I saw this was really immediately recognized that this was clearly not something that should be in a vaccine. You can see these metallic particles that are assembling this device here. You can see these blinking lights that are changing colors. And it's important to look at this here because these same blinking lights have been found not just in vaccinated, but also unvaccinated blood from this process called shedding. These bioweapons are self-spreading. And what you can see here is not just Brownian motion, but you can see these objects that are working to assemble this device here. There's optical properties, there is self-assembly. You can see how the lights are blinking, they're coming on and off. This is very important to understand that this was immediately visible because these things are also seen in the blood, and many traditional live blood and practitioners are dismissing these findings, but they are absolutely crucial. I work very closely with Karen Kingston, who has provided enormous information over the last 2 years showing quantum dot technology that's also self-assembling, as well as the hydrogel DARPA platform that can mimic all cells in the human body and basically fuses with them. So this background is important to understand and to look at, because in the human blood, we see many of these background motion as well. And in traditional live blood analysis, we are being taught that these are triglycerides. But if you can see, this is clearly a metallic object. And again, these blinking lights coming on and off are part and parcel of this technology. So the next thing I want to show, this is a video that was created by Dr. David Nixon in Australia. And this shows a time-lapse video of the self-assembly of the microchip. I believe this is about 8 hours of video time compressed. And you can clearly see the robotic arms. We're going to watch this now.
Dark field microscopy, COVID-19 mRNA vaccine.
Is an image that was from the Pfizer vial. And what you can see here is this filamental structure that has grown and that's connecting these microchips that have been identified by multiple engineers as microtechnology that had self-assembled. We are aware of the Mach phenomena where even deceased individuals, for example, the group Komusav that went to the cemetery, was able to pick up electronic signals from the deceased, that this technology is still active even when the person dies. And I have confirmed this in my live blood analysis findings, because I also have analyzed blood from deceased individuals, and I will show this later. So this is the filamental structure that we find in the blood. Initially, this was seen in vaccinated blood, but there was a historical context to this, because via geoengineering, these polymer filaments were also sprayed upon humanity for the last 30 years. So this has confused many live blood practitioners who have dismissed these findings as just dust particles. But I will show in video footage that these are not dust particles. And so these filaments then, through self-spreading mechanism, as well as the environmental contamination, were found in every unvaccinated individual. At this point, there's no human being on Earth who is not contaminated. According to Dan Wigginton from geoengineering.org, we are inhaling 20 million nanoparticles per breath. Our entire biosphere has been altered. We are at the point of almost no return towards extinction. This is why I am continuing to speak out, and I'm pleading with everyone who hasn't been brainwashed, indoctrinated, or who have sold their soul, that something must be done to stop this. What I want to also show here is, here's the filament, and there's many white blood cells that are dying here, trying to digest this polymer plastic. In the background, you see acidity and fibers. You can see that many of the red blood cells are deformed, or they are in what's called rouleau formation, in a state in which they cannot provide oxygen delivery to the tissues. You can see here some small spherical bubbles that come off of these filaments, and I will show later that these could be either part of the self-assembly. They could certainly carry toxins as well. La Quinta Columna has been a leader in the evaluation of the vials. They heated a drop of the contents, and these filamental structures develop, which is very important because we have confirmed the same findings. And I started working with Clifford Carnicom, who for 30 years has been researching the subject of Morgellons or cross-domain bacteria. The reason why I called it cross-domain bacteria was that clearly this was a synthetic biology that was sprayed via geoengineering, that had hundreds of thousands of people suffering from these strange filaments coming out of their skin, but they also had internal organ damage. They had chronic fatigue, brain fog, heart palpitations, exactly the same symptom complex that we're seeing now with long COVID. The growth structure of these filaments had features of archaea, eukaryotes, and bacteria. So that means all domains of life, and they were creating proteins. So they had fungal elements, they had bacterial elements, they had the ability to create toxins, and they're enveloped in a hydrogel form. So for example, Clifford Carnicom found that polyvinyl alcohol, which is a polymer plastic, was critical to the structure. So you can see that this was done in 2014, and that there is a marked similarity to the development of the C19 filaments in the vials from Pfizer. This is a correlation that I have drawn. So this right here is a filament that I have found in unvaccinated blood. Here you can see this bluish quantum dot-like structure that we're going to discuss further. You can see many bluish dots with reddish colors. You can see the central sort of hollow feature of this filament. Then this is the microscopy of some of Richard Hirschman's clots that Mike Adams did, and you can see similar features, this hollow internal aspect, and then this self-assembling polymer. And then this microscopy here was Clifford Carnicom's cross-domain bacteria or Morgellons investigation. These are some of the original research that Clifford Carnicom and I did together. So this was unvaccinated blood that appeared clean. And what he did was applied an extremely low-level electrical current for 2 hours at 10 milliamps. And the entire blood structure was transformed into a filament network that no longer had any blood in there. So what this shows is that all human beings are contaminated, and that electricity is one of the growth stimulators of this self-assembling polymer. This is something that David Nixon also showed. He showed that if he put a Faraday cage around the microscope slides that contained the Pfizer vials, that the growth would completely stop. In fact, that all the microchips and the filaments would disappear. if he pulled the Faraday cage off and then had the slide beside a router, they would reappear. So they had quantum properties. This is further research. So this is unvaccinated blood, and using voltammetry, which is this low-level electrical current, and there were layers that appeared within the blood, and the lowest layer showed we were able to isolate what's called this cross-domain bacteria. So from these filaments grow, and we showed this in multiple different settings, and all of that is documented in my Substack. So then we started doing near-infrared spectroscopy, and so when we isolated the cross-domain bacteria from the unvaccinated blood, we did get a signature within the near-infrared spectrum, which is able to look at functional groups. And so these had hydrogel signatures in them. So now that we've analyzed the substrate and the isolate of the cross-domain bacteria, which is the origin of genesis for the filaments that we found in the blood, then we looked at vaccinated and unvaccinated blood, and determined whether or not there were any correlations of these signatures. And so we did find an identical match for hydrogel chemical groups, in particular alkenes and polyenes. So those are part of hydrogel compounds. For example, polyethylene glycol, which is part of the nanoparticle technology in the Pfizer vials, is a polyene. Polymeric alcohols is like polyvinyl alcohol, and then polyamides are also hydrogels. The interesting thing is that we also found a lot of methyl groups. Methyl groups are needed to repair DNA and create glutathione. So this filamental structure, this artificial synthetic life form, was hijacking methyl groups, and clearly there was quite a bit of this. So this confirmed that the signatures of the cross-domain bacteria, which is the origin of genesis for the filaments which contained these hydrogel signatures, were overlapping and found in both vaccinated and unvaccinated blood. And what was very interesting was that we really didn't find any difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated blood until later. So this is further studies of Clifford Carnicom and I. We did evaluation of electrical blood conductivity, which correlates as a measure of health. One of the historical findings of Clifford Carnicom was that the cross-domain bacteria or Magellan's filaments were changing the oxygen carrying capacity of the iron from an atomic state of 2+ to 3+, which is basically like, imagine rust, and it was not transporting oxygen. So if that happens, then you are also changing what's called the zeta potential of the red blood cells. The blood cells start clumping, and it's a measure of life force. And what Clifford did was he developed a mathematical model to correlate that with human power loss or the loss of life force. And what you can see here is that the black line is the estimated power loss that's correlated to electrical conductivity. The green line is the normal range that would be expected. And the red line is what we found. So we in unvaccinated blood found numbers as low as 4.8 millisiemens. Just to explain, the normal range of electrical blood conductivity for humans is between 10 and 20 millisiemens. So let's say we took a conservative average of 15. Imagine how low 4.8 is. This is correlated symptomatically in my clinical practice with extreme fatigue, brain fog, accelerated aging. And so we have an assault on human life force, and human power loss is documented via this this synthetic biology. So it appears that it uses the human as a battery to create, to generate power to grow itself. So it's parasitic in nature, but it isn't a traditional parasite. This right here is the only difference that we found between vaccinated and unvaccinated blood. So we did impedance spectroscopy on vaccinated and unvaccinated blood, and subjected it to a range of frequencies to look at points of resonance, as well as, so resonance would be the point of maximum power transmission, but also to see if there was any electromagnetic changes that could give us some idea. And so what we found is we subjected the blood vials to frequencies ranging from 1 hertz to 25,000 hertz, and then observed what was happening in what frequency range. And if you see here in the extremely low frequency range, between 2.5 to 5 hertz, in the range of the maximum one in the range of 4 hertz, we found substantial difference in how the vaccinated blood reacts. So this was proof that human beings who were injected have been electromagnetically altered. What is also interesting is Dr. Robert Becker, who wrote the book, The Body Electric, discussed cyclotronic resonance, and he looked at the resonant frequencies of certain molecules like potassium, sodium, chloride, and it turns out that potassium is the closest to 4 hertz to be manipulated by extremely low frequency. Around the world, there has been an ambient field found at around 4 hertz that is associated with HAARP, High Auroral Research Projects. And this is used for weather modification and weather warfare, but it can also be used for mind control as well as for DNA alteration. It causes substantial stress. I did an interview with Kathy O'Brien, who's an MK Ultra survivor and whistleblower and high-level intelligence agents, who discusses that the perpetrator of these crimes feed off of extremely low frequency, and they're endeavoring to bring all of humanity down to their level. So this is a very important finding that supports our notion of what Yuval Harari said, that the soul and the spirit and free will, they want to make this a thing of the past, and literally they want to mind control humanity. These are a series of experiments that were done with injected blood. So there were 3 different individuals, 30 milliliters were drawn in 4 different vials, and the blood was left to sit for 4 hours. And you can see here that the blood cells have deposited themselves in the lower aspect, and that there's a layer here that has formed that is separate from the plasma. And the clots look like this. So you can see that the blood is down here, and this plastic-like layer is right here. And we analyzed this, and this is just a video to show you that this is like a rubber. This is a plastic that develops in C19 injected blood. You cannot pull this apart. So I received from 3 separate vaccinated individuals these same clots that you just saw, and they were placed in formalin. You can see here that I'm holding the clot with this whitish appearance, and then I took different sample sizes and I put them on a microscope slide. Within this clot, I found the same nanotechnology fibers that we've seen in the blood, and you can see here the same filamental structures. We have a lot more of these kinds of samples also from Richard Hirschman's clots that we are still in the process of analyzing. But what's very important is that these clots clearly contained red blood cells, but also nanotechnological filaments. You can see here this blue filament from the clot, and this is unvaccinated blood. You can see anybody who's saying, oh, this is just a dust filament. No, you can see that this is a blue filament. We found these also to develop as the optical communication cables in between the microchips from the Pfizer vials. And so this is highly abnormal. This should not be in the blood. These are other examples. So this is someone who came to my office unvaccinated. You can see how the hydrogel had developed. You can see many of these blinking quantum dot lights, and they have self-assembled to create this red filament. This is within the blood. You can see a few red blood cells here in the background. This is an anti-nano device that's used to pulse electromagnetic fields to decontaminate people from nanotechnology. And you can see that the same fibers come out, which are classical Morgellons fibers or cross-domain bacteria. You can see that some of the filaments are whitish, some are red, some are dark, and some are blue. So presumably, the metal composition also in them is what determines their electronic device capabilities. Here you can see another blood sample from my office, this horrendous looking filament with rouleau formation, meaning total clumping of the red blood cells, extreme acidity in the background. And this was extracted from somebody with an anti-nano device, and you can see how similar this looks. This is clearly technological filaments. This was very interesting, and this provided a quantum leap in my evaluation of the blood and really understanding self-assembly, documenting it. So I received some embalmed blood from Richard Hirschman, and from an individual that had been deceased more than 8 months ago. And it came in a little vial, and it contained some embalming fluid. And so what you can see here, this is microscopic images of red blood cells that have been preserved, and many filaments, just like we see in now in live blood. They look exactly the same. You have exactly the same blinking lights that are present, that are self-assembling here. And what I documented was that the process of self-assembly doesn't stop. So this is someone who had died with these extremely long rubbery clots. And I have captured on video footage that actually this blood continues to be transformed. So what you can see here is something that I found in the blood, and it was moving. Even the red blood cells, that while they are lifeless, they were still moved around by this technology. Here you can see a classic quantum dot-like appearance, but this had developed. So these are spherical structures, and what I'm showing you here is that even though this is dead blood, you can see how here the spheres continue to develop, how whatever electromagnetic field they're creating, they're making the blood grow. You can see that there are particles similar to what we've seen in the Pfizer vials that are moving around, and you can see here how these spheres are being created, and that they have contents of particles. And so when I saw this, I was just absolutely blown away, because this is showing, I'm going to speed it up, how much movement there is, and how the self-assembly, this is maybe a 20 to 30-minute video is continuing in this grid-like fashion. And all of these spheres are actually then later growing hydrogel structures and filaments, as I will be showing you in further documentation. So you can see this blood isn't dead, and it is kept alive. And you can see here, these are metallic objects, exactly like we were seeing in Dr. David Nixon's analysis of the Pfizer vials. Nobody can say, oh, this is food stuff. This person has been dead for more than 8 months. They haven't just had lunch. So these, all of these particles are part of the technology that helps with self-assembly. This is a close-up of these filaments, and you can see this is the highest magnification that I could get, that the lights are coming on and off. It's 100 times objective with oil, and that in here there's movement, there's ongoing assembly, there is optical voltaic properties, meaning changing colors from blue to green to yellow. So the reason why it is not as sharp is because this was an oil magnification. I couldn't get it any sharper than that, but you can see how many blue lights are changing to yellow lights. And so these are the spheres that we saw earlier that were self-assembling, and you can see these are the dead red blood cells that are still moving even though the individual has been dead for so long. So I call this zombie blood. So this right here is an image of an unvaccinated individual. And then once I saw it in the embalmed blood, I could immediately recognize. Earlier, I was thinking these are just, like bubbles that were captured with air from under the slide cover. But you can see that they're absolutely fluid filled with these metallic-like objects. And so what I want to show here is that one of these spheres has developed this hydrogel ribbon, and you can see the progression, that the material within it, you can see the blue and red blinking lights. This is a still shot. You can see the extreme toxicity to the red blood cells. They look very deformed, and how the hydrogel has been created out of the sphere to create the filament. Here you can see a further progression. You can see that multiple spheres have kind of spilled their innards to create this filament. You can see many smaller spheres that are continuing to replicate for self-assembly. So this is found in my patients who come to me with symptoms or want their blood checked. Again, since January of last year, I've not seen anybody who didn't have this in their blood, except if they were cleaned up with EDTA chelation, which is one of the antidotes that I have found to work very, very well. This is a higher magnification. You can see how the filament has developed, how multiple of these spheres have arranged. This is a perfect sphere here. The literature shows this clearly, that this is technological devices that are being used. So here you can see a closer of this, again, unvaccinated individuals. You can see the spheres, how they are spilling their innards to create this filaments, and this is why the blinking lights are found within the filaments. And then here's a sphere that also gave up some of its innards. You can see the red blinking lights, here you can see another image. You can see multiple of these spheres that intelligently have accumulated to create this hydrogel filament ribbon. These are also part of this self-assembly, and it continues to expand in size. Here you can see an individual who had multiple of these spheres. The hydrogel was developed, and then it's creating here a filament, and you can see how toxic the blood looks in the background. So I am extremely concerned because I've seen an extreme acceleration of the toxicity of the blood and how bad it looks. You know, this classic toxic spike-like appearance of the red blood cells. You can see many of these spheres that are continuing to self-assemble this. This is microclotting. These are fibrin clots. So very, very concerning. This is another video of an individual, and you can see the amount of the hydrogel in the blood. So you can see how toxic the blood looks like, and then how many filaments you can see in different stages of self-assembly. This in the background, you can see this was somebody who just ate, but still you can see blinking lights, these little spheres. They are assembling to create the hydrogel. There's extreme toxicity seen. And there was just so much of this stuff, literally replacing now the blood in this network. And this is so large, you know, this can cause strokes, this can cause heart attacks. You can see here again how the lights change from blue to red to green. This is classic quantum dot technology, biosensing technology. This is very, very concerning. This is why I'm sounding the alarm, because everything that I have found in my research has been consistent. It is accelerating extremely. If the large-scale antidote like EDTA chelation isn't rolled out, I believe that we will continue to see mass casualties. This stuff is EMF responsive. It is HARP responsive. It can be manipulated with external electromagnetic fields. It can transform humans into cyborgs. This right here is another very concerning trend. So just over the last 2 weeks, I've seen more and more people where the blood is replaced by many of these spheres, and there's almost more spheres of this hydrogel self-assembly than there is blood. And you can see all of these blinking lights. They're all part of the quantum dot self-assembling technology. And you can see all of these spheres are in the process of assembling a network that basically replaces human tissue with hydrogel, and is very concerning. Here you can see how the hydrogel has been developed, but these are very early stages, and the blood is just being, pushed aside in a sense, and the self-assembly continues within minutes of being on the slide. This right here is the embalmed blood, and what I wanted to show is that these spheres are actually, they can also look like this when they're in embalmed blood. You can see the round spheres, and then again, this hydrogel-like substance is developed. But the reason why I know what to look for now in the living is because I found it in the dead. This right here is explaining the carbon nanofibers, which show that this bubble aspect is part of the self-assembling nanotechnology. And this is actually used as a battery. So it's almost like a process of electrolysis, where there's an electrical current being created that is oxidizing iron, which is exactly what we found in the human blood in our studies. And here what I want to show is, here is exactly what I just showed you. Here you can see the bubbles that are assembling the structure. They are clearly intelligent. They are involved in growing this and self-assembling this. It could be that these also contain toxins. You can see a lot of movement back here. But all of these are not blood cells. These are not bacteria. These are perfect spheres nanotechnological devices that are involved in the self-assembly to this hydrogel filament. And you can see how many of the quantum dot-like self-assembling technology has been incorporated into the filament, as I've shown earlier. You can see that this is a very active movement. Again, this was found in unvaccinated individuals that were exposed to shedding. So this technology is being replicated in the vaccinated individuals, and then they are a factory. We found this in blood, urine, sweat, in saliva, in sputum. They are exuding it, and then we are also getting it environmentally. We found it in rainwater, it was in the masks and the PCR swabs. So this is one aspect of the self-assembling mechanism. Here's a video on what really is a quantum dot.
Quantum dots are small semiconducting nanocrystals that can be made up of a variety of different elements, such as silicon, cadmium selenide, or cadmium sulfide. They range in size from 2 to 10 nanometers. 1 nanometer is about the width of 2 silicon atoms. These semiconducting materials are able to absorb light. When they release that energy, they transform it into a different color of light. The specific color that a quantum dot will produce depends mostly on the size and material of the quantum dot. The reason for this is something called quantum confinement. The effect is similar to that of 2 different sized bells. When the larger one is struck, the result will be low energy sound waves. While the smaller one creates higher energy waves. When light excites a quantum dot, the larger the size of the dot, the lower the energy waves will be, resulting in a redder light. The smaller it is, the bluer the light will be. Quantum dots are currently used in biological and medical research, as well as in solar panels, televisions, and solid-state lighting.
What is important here to understand is that we're really also looking at this quantum dot technology here. And so what I'd like to show now is what I found in the blood. And you can see here, you can see these are bluish colored. They change colors to red, to yellow. And they are found everywhere in the human blood. They're part of self-assembling these structures. So there's no organic material in the human body that would blink like this and that would change colors. So this is self-assembled quantum dot technology. The quantum dots can assemble from nanometer size to a larger size. And because of their ability to modify light and change frequency signals, they are integral to changing also the human body, because we are frequency beings. And what you can see here is, for example, this clumped up red stuff, and all of these quantum dots are in here, and maybe they are a part and parcel of changing the electrical conductivity of the blood and giving its intelligent design. So this right here is a video of, again, all of these samples are unvaccinated, which is why this is so concerning. You can see extreme rouleau formation everywhere, and you can see this blue fiber, which is clearly nanotechnology, which is extremely long, thousands of times larger than a red blood cell, that grew out of this enormous sphere that had the quantum dot material and possible metals. You can see in the background, there's many blinking lights here, quantum dots, as well as the toxic appearance of the red blood cell. So you can see here, this is the material that then is used to create the filament. And they have their instructions in terms of how and what kind of biosensing device they are creating. And some filaments are whitish, some are red, some are blue. Here's another video in a different state of self-assembling. So you can see here many of the quantum dots, and then you can see how they assembled to create this hydrogel filament that will continue to grow in size. And here's microclotting as well as rouleau formation. So what I want to show now is also a case history of the antidote. So Karen Kingston found in the patents that EDTA chelation is able to dissolve the hydrogel. I certainly found it very useful because so EDTA is a molecule that binds to metals. So if we just take the metals out, we can potentially dissolve the electronic properties of these devices and lower the toxicity for the human body. It appears that EDTA could be useful to dissolve the hydrogel as well as graphene, which is the carbon nanotubes. So we have a molecule that also is an electron donor, so it's electrically conductive and it can give back some of the hijacked electricity. So what I would like to show here is this is a provoked metals test after 1,500 milligrams of EDTA chelation. So at the beginning of therapies with my patients, I look at how much metals are we actually pulling out. And I just want to show the enormous metal contamination that can be found in people who eat organic, who, live a very clean life, in a rural area. But we are being sprayed like insects with this stuff. And you can see aluminum and barium are classic metals that have been found to be sprayed via geoengineering. Aluminum is a neurotoxin. All of these metals have synergistic toxicity. If you, for example, combine aluminum with mercury, you get the growth of enormous material that appears almost combustible, clearly toxic. Then if you see here, cesium can be radioactive. Uranium certainly is radioactive. In the last couple of years, I've seen an exponential increase in uranium. Tungsten is a metal that Mark Steele says the only reason to have that in your body is if it was used as a weapon against you. Things like platinum or other metals. This individual previously had chemotherapy, which is loaded with heavy metals, and these people need to detox. Lead, it can be found. It used to be in gasoline. It's in the soil. Its half-life in the body is more than 30 years. With gadolinium, which is the contrast material, radiologists know that this is neurotoxic. It has to be pulled out of the body. So what I just want to show is the hydrogel clearly has a lot of substrate to pull from the body to create electronic devices with this kind of a metal load. This is a video footage of what I've seen recently in the last couple of weeks of somebody who presented with chronic fatigue. Again, very healthy lifestyle. And the toxicity of the blood is so advanced that I find it literally scary. This is why I'm sounding the alarm as much as I can, and I hope you will share this video. So what you can see here, the extreme toxicity to the blood almost looks dead to me. Extremely toxic. The red blood cells are deformed. You can see enormous amounts of hydrogel in here. You can see many quantum dots. The bluish lights here are visible everywhere. This is a complete technological assault on humanity. And again, I've never in my career, I've been a doctor more than 25 years, seen blood look like this clumped together, lifeless, like a mush. This does not transport oxygen. It's not compatible with life, really. And I think that that the danger is clearly increasing, even to the unvaccinated. I already have had patients die from shedding. This you can see again within the blood, and I've seen this more and more. You can see the spherical structure that is beginning to self-assemble a filament. And what you can see here is this extreme rouleau formation, and then the same round spheres that I showed you before, filled with quantum dot technology. Here you can see a bluish dot that's changing into a red color, which is transmitting electromagnetic frequency. I believe that they're controlling via artificial intelligence the growth of these filaments and external radiation. You can see here many quantum dots are linked here within the red blood cells and causing this rouleau-like formation. So this people like this have extreme fatigue. They really don't feel well, heart palpitations, all of the symptoms of what they call long COVID. In my mind, there was not a virus. There was a nanotechnological and synthetic biology assault. Karen Kingston has verified that literally Sir Francis Collins said in 2020 that they were able to create a quantum dot nanocrystal that would give an antibody response as if there was a coronavirus. However, there never was. We know that there was never a virus isolated. So we were attacked by a technological military grade weapon. This right here is after the treatment with my protocol. So the patient immediately got 1,500 milligrams of EDTA chelation with vitamin C and other B vitamins, as well as glutathione the first day. The second day, she got 20,000 milligrams of ascorbic acid. Also used a peptide called epithalone. The third day was a repeat EDTA chelation with glutathione. After 3 days, we repeated the live blood analysis, and it looked like this. So you can see now healthy blood. You can see these are white blood cells. The cells have normalized in their shape. This right here is just a reflection from the dark field condenser, but you can see a dramatic improvement here. You can see that the background looks excellent, no acidity. You can see that the red blood cells look healthy. They're transporting oxygen. They have been restored in the electric capacity. These are all white blood cells. They are natural. You can see that no hydrogel filaments have been found. Much reduced blinking lights like quantum dots, which were previously everywhere. You don't see really blue or red coloring except in very few places. So this is a dramatic improvement. This is what I have looked at over and over. And unfortunately, people need to continue to detox and decontaminate. I mean, I found these filaments in the meat supply. We found it in pharmaceutical medications, but this is truly a miraculous detoxification protocol that needs to be really deployed on a global scale to save humanity. It's the same individual, higher magnification. You can see that the blood has flow where earlier nothing was moving. When the red blood cells are touching each other, they are not clumping together. You can see still some microclotting. We use nattokinase for this, but clearly you can see a dramatic improvement. So even though there is so much evidence for crimes against humanity, there's also hope. I have provided extensive documentation about this on my Substack, and I wanted to just present this comprehensive overview of my research and the research of my colleagues. So for example, here this is improved blood, but you still can see that there's a quantum dot sitting there. So if this individual was to do nothing, eventually they would get recontaminated, and we have to continue to treat. So this is either way extreme hope. You remember how the red blood cells were looking of this individual. This is healthy, happy blood, really, really looking wonderful, and the patient was feeling much better. So I think that I've shown this now over and over again, how well the EDTA intravenous chelation works. People are trying to use it orally, but if you're highly contaminated, you need a much higher dose. Imagine imagine it. If I see this stuff in one drop of blood, so much hydrogel, you need a much higher doses of EDTA to actually have effectiveness, and you need to monitor people and show that their blood looks better. So this is just a representation. I cannot look at 6 liters of blood, but it certainly gives hope. It is my hope that people will share this information, and it is my hope that people wake up. Something must be done immediately, and the people must rise, because you're being poisoned, and the freedom movement is not giving the adequate treatment for this nanotechnological assault. And I think that we need to very broadly apply EDTA chelation intravenously, certainly study it further. But we don't have much time, because the exponential worsening of the blood that I have seen now in the last weeks is extremely concerning. And we must take into consideration that all of us need to unite. I am building an organization called Humanity United now. We're really, regardless of our denomination, language, skin color, wherever we live, we are all human beings. We're divine, and we are fighting for our survival. We must rise against this. Thank you so much for listening, and please share this everywhere. Hello, welcome. My name is Dr. Anna Maria Mihalcea, and today I am again super excited to continue my conversation with Karen Kingston. I've been reporting a lot on the science of transhumanism, on cyborgs, and how all of the scientific findings that I've been finding in the blood correlate with the literature. And Karen has really done groundbreaking work from the beginning of this pandemic, explaining to people what is hydrogel, what is graphene oxide, what are these things doing in the shots, what are their purpose. And I am so honored that she continues to provide just such valuable information, and we continue to collaborate. And so welcome, Karen. Thanks so much for being back on my show.
Thank you, Anna. It's an honor to be here, and I'm just honored to be your colleague, your friend, and I got to admit I'm a fan too. I follow your Substack, obviously, and I recommend it to many people. So, you've really been on the cutting edge of disclosing the truth about what's in the mRNA injections, and then you and I have been on this crusade together to say, well, look, this nanoparticle technology is not only in the shots, but it's in so many things that we're exposed to, from consumables, like we talked about, like the food supply and water supply and other medications, and you expose the insulin and other vaccines and whatnot. And I think, after following your Substack the last few weeks, I noticed just how much people are unaware of the fact that there is this huge push to truly merge man with synthetic biology. And again, that's not just the merger with technology, right? It's also the merger with non-human DNA. So it's merging humans with non-human DNA as well as with the technological realm. And a core component of that, and a core component of the enslavement, is having an injectable hydrogel graphene oxide neural network. And that's what I wanted to dive into today, because what people don't realize regarding the mRNA injections, first of all, some people are still falsely calling them vaccines. And I wish that terminology would be dropped completely, because there's no therapeutic benefit, and they're not gene editing therapies either. But as you know, I've been a big proponent of calling them biological weapons based on 18 U.S.C. 175. But even equally important, if not more important, is they're also neurological weapons. They are neuroweapons. And I want to show the documents from the military, from Charles Lieber, from Harvard, from James Giordano that show, and from Elon Musk, that these mRNA platform injections actually contain a hydrogel that can go to the central nervous system, go to the brain, and start creating a new neural network. So
that's awesome. And I think that that's really, really important. And I've been endeavoring to tell people about this because as Klaus Schwab was saying, that the technology of the fourth industrial revolution will change the human being from the inside so that they're not even aware that they're being changed. And this is why this is so dangerous. And I just want to say, this is a bit off topic, but I was thinking about you yesterday and I was so excited about, speaking with you today. And I just want to say, the two of us, we've had some significant difficulties on this journey because we've taken tremendous risks to expose this. And both of us understand what neurological weapons are. And I just want to say to you, I am so glad you're still alive, and I'm so glad I'm still alive.
I'm glad that you're still alive. I know we faced the devil himself,
That's totally right. So please, share your screen and let's dive in and
and talking about the World Economic Forum, Yuval Noah Harari, what did he say with the fourth industrial revolution? He said, free will, that's a thing of the past, so that is taking over your consciousness and your thoughts and very importantly, your memory. And if you'll look at the news lately, there's a lot of articles that talk about acute early onset of Alzheimer and dementia in people in their 30s and 40s, right? This is not acute onset. This is the effects of a neuroweapon being unleashed on the global population. That's what it is.
And absolutely, and I see that in my clinical practice. So I have a screening tool in my office called the Wavi Brain EEG that allows me to do functional assessments. And what I saw early on, that in the hippocampus area, the electrical voltage was extremely reduced, even in young people, correlating with a functional brain age increase by like many decades. And so, electron donors like methylene blue and, other things that actually are helpful to increase or bypass mitochondrial dysfunction are very, very important for this. But I absolutely agree with you because I've seen this clinically.
Wow, that's scary, but yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. Well, let me share my screen, and we're going to start with a man named Charles Lieber. So if you can see the screen, and I'll show you real quick. This is who Charles Lieber is. He was arrested and charged and convicted in 2020 for working with the Chinese People Liberation Army on neurological weapons and nanofibers and nano networks, and we'll touch on that in a second. But this paper was published in Science in December 2017. Now, Charles Lieber works out of Harvard University. He's been working, as we'll see from the DOJ's document, with the Chinese People Liberation Army on neuroweapons. So technically, he's been working on neuro-nanoscience out of Harvard since 2008. And he created nanowires that he tested in mice. So again, this is from 2017 in Science. And what the authors wrote is like, if you're a sci-fi aficionado, you know that this is how cyborgs get their start, which is wires emerging from the heads of small mice. So this was actually a, on top of the head, it wasn't an injectable at the time. It was, I don't know what the word is. I guess subcutaneous, right? Subcutaneous, and then into the skull to do the rewiring. But Lieber, he is, I guess, the godfather, if you will, of what we're calling Neuralace now, or Neuralink. And so he's the pioneer in bioelectronics, where electronics integrate seamlessly into the nervous tissue. And they say that can lead to innovative treatments for humans, right? From blindness to Alzheimer's. But if you read through the article, it also says, as they're talking about the mice, and we are the mice, is that the electrodes not only carry input, but also output. So not only are you getting, information in, but the information is also going out so that they can observe the thoughts, the memories, the impulses of the person, right? So they can literally read your thoughts. That's what this is saying. So he's saying the day will come when they will not just monitor mice, but also control them is not far off. So this is creating a neural network above the meshwork, your neural meshwork in your brain, and actually being able to predict behavior. And that's what Yuval Noah Harari is talking about. The article goes on to say the boundary between living organisms and the outside world is dissolving, says David Martin, a bioelectronics expert in Delaware, in Newark. And you have to ask, where does life end and engineering begin? And this is what you and I have been warning people about. When I say, what is synthetic biology? It's taking biology and having technology mimic biology and taking biology and integrating it into technology. And at that point, you have no free will.
And I'm so glad that you're mentioning this because we had just talked about Robert Duncan, the PhD who worked for the CIA and actually developed the algorithm for brain surveillance of the world grid as well as targeting. And he was exactly speaking about this, that this is already in use by the CIA worldwide.
Yes, yeah, it is. That's like when Elon Musk is going around, prancing around saying, I put my first neural lace chip in a person. No, this has been going on since 2008, basically. Yeah. So the article, it goes on. So Charles Lieber, again, he was out of Harvard, hopes to mesh the study of learning, memory formation, and the loss of memory associated with aging and disease, first in animals and then eventually in humans. So, I mean, make no mistake, when they talk about the loss of memory, they can induce the loss of memory. And as we were saying, there's a lot of cases of 30 and 4-year-olds having acute onset of dementia and Alzheimer's now. And even I just speaking with young adult teens and in their 20s, many of them are losing their memories for some reason from not just when they're children, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, but like 10, 12, early teens. They're like, I'm just not remembering those things. And that's a little bit strange in my opinion. There's a lot, I think these neural weapons are very, very damaging. So they go on to talk about, actually in this article, that they do use the polyethylene glycol, is the biocompatible coating that they use for the mesh so that the immune system doesn't attack these biosynthetic neural networks and degrade them. So that's the PEG is really important to stop the immune system from attacking these neural weapons. So it says right here, they're working to connect these polymer wrapped cells to mesh electrodes, which would allow the cells to communicate with the outside world. It also stops the immune system from degrading them. And they said that's basically the future. So and I'll do a full article on Charles Lieber, but it's important to note that, again, beginning in 2020, he was investigated by the Department of Justice. He had received $15 million from the National Institutes of Health, but he was receiving something like $50,000 a month from the People's Liberation Army to work on these neural weapons with 2 other Chinese scientists and doctors and inventors out of China. So for purposes of developing neural weapons, and we know from China's own newspapers and their own media that they are planning to be the leaders in neural warfare. And they've been experimenting on their own soldiers and their own civilians on how to have the 2-way connection between the brain and the internet, have a soldier's brain control an insect or a soldier's brain control an airplane and whatnot. So Charles Lieber out of Harvard, who was being funded by the NIH, here's a lot of the information here, was also working with the People's Liberation Army. So this is warfare, and this is neural warfare. These are neural weapons. And I think that's another word that should be introduced in our vocabulary when we're talking about these mRNA nanoparticle technologies. Now, keep in mind, Dr. Robert Malone did say in the interview with Glenn Beck when Glenn Beck said, what is mRNA technology? And he goes, it's basically a term for the suite of technologies for the purposes of transhumanism, for merging humans with non-human DNA and with the technology realm. So I just, the term mRNA is a misnomer, but one of the pioneers has said, oh, it's the term that we use for all of these nanoparticle technologies for transhumanism. And so a subsector of that is a neuroweapon.
And what you were just saying in terms of like the non-human DNA as well as the technology, both of those are actually definition of what a cyborg is. So if you're introducing non-human DNA, you're creating already a cyborg because it's genetically engineered and modified.
Yeah, and also too, just like what they said at the beginning of this article, once you insert a device into a human body, and obviously if you set something neurological, to rewire their central nervous system or their brain, that's step one of becoming a cyborg.
Yeah.
And so we shouldn't be, I think Hollywood and people who want to cover up these dark technologies, they've made it sound like, make it terms like cyborg and nanotechnology and neuroweapon. They make it sound like you're a crazy person when you talk about it. But as we go through this presentation, Anna, these terminologies are all over the peer-reviewed publications. For goodness sake, Science magazine, Nature magazine, has a publication called nanotech. It's not a crazy word, and we need to just face what these are. So this is, Lieber worked part of China's 1,000 Talents plan, which, I mean, this is a whole nother story, but he ended up just serving like a month in jail and now he's back. But one of the things he was charged with was developing neuro nano batteries and neuro nano networks. Why is that important? Well, guess what Elon Musk manufactures? These are nano batteries, right? And I have a couple articles in my Substack on this. He has a contract with CureVac. I don't think I pulled that here. With CureVac, which is one of the mRNA companies out of Germany, and they contracted with Elon Musk to manufacture nano batteries out of his Tesla manufacturing facility in Germany, okay? And CureVac is funded by Elon Musk. He's one of the founding members, and so is Bill and Melinda Gates, and he owns intellectual property in CureVac for the mRNA technology and for what they're calling 3D printers, which is printers of these biosynthetic pathogens and printers of these nano batteries. So I have a whole Substack on that. But I think, again, what's important about Elon Musk, I'm bringing this up because Alex Jones was saying how he's pro-human, but Elon Musk talks out of both sides of his mouth. He always talks about transhumanism. So you can't be pro-transhumanism and pro-merging with AI and pro-human. Because once you make permanent genetic changes to the human genome, that's to the extermination of our species. So you can't be both. So in 2016, in an article, Futurism, he explains how his neural lace hardware can be injected and travel to the brain through the bloodstream.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, well, what I just showed the Lieberman was there was an injectable network into the mice. They actually injected into the retina, and then it went to the brain. So this is 2016. He's like, you can inject it into the bloodstream, and it'll go to the brain, right?
And this is totally consistent with MIT saying, hydrogel is the brain-computer interface. It absolutely is.
Exactly, yeah. And here he said it's cranial computers, a layer of artificial intelligence inside the brain. And I was just showing you Lieberman because this is based on Lieberman's work too, and on a company called BlackRock. So here, hardware could be injected and travel to the brain through the bloodstream. Then I think this is a 2017. He's talking about how he's going to merge the human brain with artificial intelligence and futurism. So he's not pro-human. He's pro-AI. He's saying, these technocrats are funding AI, artificial intelligence. It's now general artificial intelligence. It has the ability to learn, and they're saying it surpassed human intelligence. It could replace humans for most of our functionality. And they're basically saying, if you want to survive, then you need us to force you to become part of this new AI species, which means you're going to be part of the control grid, and your network's going to be merged with AI.
That's exactly right. I mean, he's saying, to be able to save humanity from AI, you have to merge with AI. I'm like, no, be it. Absolutely not, because as soon as you do, you have no longer any control. And the whole idea about merging AI can then program the human in whichever way and decide at any moment to discard the human.
Yeah, that's the thing. People have no idea how dangerous these electromagnetic nanoparticle technologies are, in that, again, because they can input, you can send pulses to them and information, but you could just send a high frequency electromagnetic pulse that then would annihilate your cells and your tissue. So it could just wipe out your brain. And I should have taken an image of the hydrogel doing that from one of these articles. I'll show you what article it's in, but I didn't show it. But they literally show, cancer brain cells, they're alive, and then you send an EMF and they're all dead. But if you've got this technology in your brain and you don't have cancer, it could still, if it's in the hippocampus, then you've wiped out who you are. You've wiped out your memories, your beingness, it's really scary. So here's another key person is James Giordano. He joined, he became an advisor to the Department of Defense, to DARPA, and to the intelligence communities under Obama in 2008. He is currently he was former Marine. He still currently advises, to my information, to my knowledge, the U.S. military and intelligence community. And he's the chief of neuroethics at Georgetown University. So he talks about COVID-19 to create a pandemic of the worried well by aerosolizing nanoparticle technology. What's important about him in regards to this conversation too is that he worked on the BRAIN initiative for dual-use brain science projects. So the BRAIN initiative was funded and initiated in 2008 under the Cures Act, 2008 under Obama, and in 2016 it got billions of dollars of more under the Cures Act. And I just wanted to show people that this is from the Cures Act, section 2036, high risk, high reward research. And there's funding there for precision medicine. This is part of the BRAIN initiative, and it's also part of the cancer moonshot. What is precision medicine? Well, the legal definition of precision medicine, look at this, Anna, is under US Code 289-5, I think that says, is to identify and address the advanced supercomputing and other advanced technology needs for the initiative. So the funding for healthcare is now a supercomputing. That's what precision medicine is. So this is the biodigital realm.
Absolutely. They want to replace all of healthcare with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, you don't need advanced supercomputing and general AI for keeping electronic medical records.
No.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, so that's what that's for. And then I just want to show, so they have the money towards precision medicine. And
how much money is that? That's like $1 trillion or what?
Yeah, it's 1.5 trillion. That's 1.5 trillion there.
That is an amazing amount of money.
Yeah, there's more. There's like 5 trillion in the BRAIN initiative, and then there's 1.5 trillion in the there's 1.5 trillion in the BRAIN initiative, and then there was 4.8 trillion in the cancer moonshot initiative, the Beau Biden cancer moonshot. That's mRNA research. That's mRNA nanoparticle research. So that was 4.8 trillion. So 1.5 trillion in the BRAIN initiative. So this is 2016. So this was funded in 2016, right? So this money was used actually under the Trump administration. So I went to see some of the projects under the BRAIN initiative, and one of them was the Electric Prescription Project. And the program aims to help the human body heal itself through neuromodulation of organ functions using ultra miniaturized devices. So nano batteries, nano networks, approximately the size of individual nerve fibers. So this is Lieberman's and Elon Musk's work, which could be delivered through minimally invasive injection.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you have nanobots in your body, you're already a cyborg. I just recently published an article on that. You meet the definition for cyborg.
Oh, I have to take a look at that. So I want to still believe that we're here you're human. We've all been exposed to this. So
Yeah,
yeah, and our bodies can detox, right? I mean,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah. Okay, so then another initiative is the Neural Engineering System Design Initiative. And again, this is an implantable neural interface to provide unprecedented signal resolution and data transfer bandwidth between the brain and the digital world. This is the cyborg. This is the creative creation of Human 2.0. It's the humanoid that Elon Musk talks about. And I just think people should be aware of this, and we should have the right as Americans and as humans to say no. We don't want to engage in this affront to God by forcing us to merge with technologies and forcing the evolution of our bodies with non-human DNA. Now, keep in mind too, when Musk talks about going to Mars, he talks about having to evolve the human species. One of the key genetic materials that they want to incorporate into us is from cockroaches. And I have a study on this because cockroaches are apparently they can withstand a nuclear fallout, right? And they can also, they don't need the same kind of oxygen levels and all that other stuff. So there's this real drive to incorporate human DNA with insect DNA, and I just think that's disgusting. It's an affront to God, in my opinion. So
it is disgusting. Can I just interrupt you real quick? Didn't you find also patents of the mRNA inventor that specifically used these types of genetic materials?
From flies, yeah. I actually specifically used fireflies, the African clawed frog, and I don't remember the third animal, but also they also looked at how to incorporate with venomous peptides from reptiles, from snakes as well. Oh, and from snails. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really disgusting. But again, this is also just from DARPA. It's an article. Atom with graphene sensors could provide unprecedented insights into the brain structure and function. So why did I pull this? Graphene oxide, graphene oxide, graphene oxide. This material is being used across, as you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different types of medical supplies. It's being used in cosmetics. They truly are trying to integrate the human body, the human brain, all of our systems with the graphene oxide because it's a great conductor of the electromagnetic field, right? So it can be controlled and you can be enslaved that way, and you can also be harmed that way, again, because it's a great receiver of an electromagnetic pulse. So if it has a positive charge in your body for a sustainable time, you're going to annihilate those cells and tissues.
And it can also be used for quantum computing.
Yeah, yeah. I just think people should know about this, and I wish Congress would talk about it more. I wish the mainstream media would talk about it more. But again, these articles are from 2015, 2016, and the article just goes on to talk about that this is a top priority for President Obama's BRAIN initiative, the electrical monitoring and stimulation of neural signals for study of brain function. That's not just for study of brain function, it's to control our thoughts, our behaviors, our actions, and or to disable us or exterminate you. That's what could happen. And I know it's pretty scary, but it's just this is something that should not be kept in the darkness. So now,
and just 1 second, if you go back one, I've been doing a lot of research on the bioluminescence, phosphorescent glow on people, and if you see down there, it clearly says that graphene is also used for super resolved fluorescent microscopy. It earned the researchers a Nobel Prize in chemistry and optogenetic, and it is involved by genetically modifying cells to create specific light reactive proteins. So the fact that we've been finding, number one, these polymers that are coming out of people's skin, as well as this orange fluorescent glow that starts to really be pronounced 2 weeks after getting a shot. I mean, look at what this says here in regards to what can be done with graphene, which we know is in the shots as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really important point, and I think that's this LED lights have been put up for these reasons as well. I don't know if it's just to indicate who's been injected or inoculated and who hasn't, or if they actually will play a role in the genetic modification, or neurological modifications. So this is the patent that I show all the time, but I just wanted to go back. So what does neuroweapons, biosynthetic neural networks have to do with the mRNA COVID-19 injections? Absolutely everything. So this is the patent that's on Moderna's website. The verbiage here describes the verbiage in Moderna's and Pfizer's filings with the FDA that these are 80 to 160 nanometer nanoparticles with mod RNA, the pegylated lipid, et cetera, et cetera. They're polymer-based, self-assembled nanoparticles and fully programmable. So that means when they're self-assembled, they can go in and they can create their own network, including a neural network, right?
Absolutely. And by the way, the pseudouridine that they put in you, that alone makes you a cyborg. Because
why is that? Can you explain that to me?
Because pseudouridine isn't produced by the human body. It's an artificial modification, and so now you have this aspect of an mRNA that doesn't even belong in the human body. It's the same thing as if you were injecting an animal genetic material there. Pseudouridine doesn't exist in a human.
Okay. So that it should have. So, and then obviously the gels and hydrogels are part of the patent, and we've gone over this before, but I just wanted to be very clear that this is in the patents, and we're going to show how it's in the peer reviews too. And again, I think this is important to note, is that hydrogels can contain up to 99% water. They're synthetic polymers. They possess a degree of flexibility similar to natural tissue, and so they can create a network that mimics natural tissues and organs. And that's why we're seeing those, what they're calling clots, which are those fibers, right? Those are these hydrogel networks, among other materials. So this is a book that I had purchased, I read a couple of years ago, and it's really, I don't know if I shared this with you, I'll send it to you. It's very enlightening. It's called Self-Assembling Genetically Engineered Hydrogels. So what are these hydrogels? It explains that genetically engineered hydrogels are noted for their modularity, their versatility, their genetic programmability, and they're gaining traction with material scientists and synthetic biologists who are eyeing the prospect of mass producing these materials via biosynthesis. What is biosynthesis? It is photosynthesis for animals, right? And also for humans, for other life forms. So how can they use the human body to then produce these hydrogels, to produce what they're calling spike proteins, which are graphene oxide nanoparticle hydrogels? So how can you hijack systems in the human body to become production facilities for these smart, intelligent, genetically engineered biosynthetic organs?
And there was an article published that clearly showed that the spike protein genetic sequence has a sequence that produces hydrogel as a pH of 7. Versus at a pH of 4, it would create amyloid. And everybody's saying, oh, there's so much amyloidosis and things like that. No. And I've been saying for 2 years, no, it's hydrogel, and it's in the literature. So it's exactly what you just said.
Yeah, and also the myocarditis is being caused by those amyloid proteins too. So that makes so much sense. So people are getting hijacked. So this is an image, and we're going to go back to it. This is an image within this paper. Genetically engineered hydrogels, and this is what they look like, Anna. They look like what we're calling spike protein SARS-CoV-2 virus. That's what they are, and these were used in cancer therapies. This is showing it attack a cancer tumor, and look how it's delivered. The only thing I added was these arrows. Oh, it's an injection, right? So this article, I had pulled different types of smart nanogel for targeted delivery. I just wanted to show people this. This is a plant, it's a chloroplast that was infected with hydrogel. Look what it looks like. I mean, it looks like what we're calling the spike protein or the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is a lipid nanoparticle with those chimeric synthetic biology pathogens attached to the outside. That's what this is.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just believe your lying eyes, So this is the image from this paper, and again, that's an image from the CDC of the SARS-CoV-2 virus or spike protein. The spike protein technically is just these things on the outside. That's what. Anyway, they made up all these words. That's why it's so confusing. But you know what I'm saying. So this is a genetically engineered intelligent hydrogel, what we're calling the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. And this should be alarming to people. Smart hydrogel can perceive small and physical stimuli. It's intelligent, right? It can respond to temperature, light, magnetism, pH, like you were saying, and it'll change based on its environment. And it has fascinating applications in tissue engineering. I have a paper, I got to send it to you, where they're making hydrogel steaks. Yum, yum. That is disgusting, right? I mean, who wants a steak made from hydrogel? And they talk about the contactless control and easy integration into electronic devices. So this is truly for cyborgism, if you will.
Yeah, so what they're calling smart hydrogel, this is what I call micro and nanorobots, and I see them in the blood, and they're these, they look like quantum dots, but that's exactly what they are. They're biosensors that can check for temperature, light, magnetism, all of this stuff. So it's all coherent with what I am already seeing in everybody's blood.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, I think this paper is from, when is it? Maybe 2020 or 2019. The earlier papers from like the 2007, 10, 12, they do call them nanorobots. That's what it's called. So they changed the vernacular, right? To hydrogel, because maybe hydrogels to people sounds more biological than obviously a nanorobot, right? But originally the vernacular was nanorobots, and I can send you some of those older papers. And again, this is just showing all of the applications of it. Here are soft actuators. An actuator is an electric system for two-way communication, and a soft actuator is a system that is synthetic, mimics biology in nature, right, with inside a living organism. So actuators are, typically large electronic communication systems. Like it's a military term. And now soft actuators are systems that are being built inside the human body. So again, this is just showing the magnetic nanoparticles, hydrogel. These are magnetic hydrogels and just different applications of them. I'm just trying to think why I had pulled this. I think this is, go on.
Just to remind people, because a lot of people are talking about interbody error network, so this is exactly what we're discussing here. So what Ian Akildis from Georgetown University has developed, artificial cells that inside of them have actually a computer device that is able to genetically engineer and modify individuals, as well as be used for biosensing capabilities. So this is exactly the same thing, and it's in the medical literature, but it's called hydrogel.
Yeah, that's it. And then I just wanted to share, these are iron oxide nanoparticles, graphene oxide, magnite. They go through a number of different metals that maybe some of these aren't typically magnetic, but what they explain is they modify the charge, the electron. They actually they displace electrons or add electrons so that they can create a positive ionic charge. And once you have that positive ionic charge, now you're creating the magnetic field. So that's why people are attracting typically non-magnetic metals can stick to the body, right? Because they're creating this non-ferromagnetic, if I'm saying that right, field that will host the metals. So this is a great book to read. It's exhaustive, and I read it 2 years ago, so my memory's not 100% up to speed on everything, but it really it's a good starter to understand this technology. And this is just the conclusion, which they talk about hydrogel as self-propagating living material. Make no mistake, this is a new life form. These biosynthetic scientists and technocrats created life. They played God, and they created life that is made of multiple species that include human DNA as well as insect DNA and reptilian DNA, and they merged it with technology. And it's a new living material, and it's self-assembly. And again, this is what synthetic biology is. It's taking technology and bringing it to life. and merging biological life forms with technology.
And I just, right here want to remind people Morgellons is exactly what this is. And now we're seeing this with these fluorescent filaments coming out of people's bodies who were injected. This is artificial life. It literally is conscious, and it knows, the biophotonic light field. It is drawn to it. So, please see for yourself. Here is the literature proof that of everything that we've been finding recently.
Yeah, it's all there. There's hundreds. We're going to go into that. There's hundreds and hundreds of papers. I think I just brought this up to re-show it clean, so you can see these look like what we're calling spike proteins or viruses, and they're injectable. So these, synthetic biological neuroweapons were unfortunately directly injected into the bloodstream of billions of innocent civilians around the globe. And make no mistake, they're neuroweapons. That's why we started off talking about Charles Lieber, talking about James Giordano, the Brain Initiative, and Elon Musk saying as early as 2016, 2017, they were able to inject these hydrogel, graphene oxide, meshwork, neuroweapons into the bloodstream that would then go to the brain. So this, and Pfizer talks about that in their 5 million reported serious adverse events, 1/3 of them were neurological in nature. And that's what long COVID is as well. And so, yes, the US military is involved with this as well. I've never denied that. I've always said that. Just from a legal strategy, I always focus on Pfizer. But this is 2018 EcoHealth Alliance pitch to DARPA. And what was SARS-CoV-2? It was not a virus. They said right there, we're going to make chimeric spike proteins. So we're going to take species from multiple animals. We're going to mess around with them, create these multi-species genetic materials. How do we bring that new life, that new genetic organism to life? Right here. The SARS-CoV-2, they're going to incorporate them. The R is this is the spike protein, bat spike proteins. Incorporate them into nanoparticles. That's what gives it the life. The nanoparticle is the genetically engineered graphene oxide hydrogel. And so that's what the virus was. It's nanoparticle technology.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And, it's terrible that people continue to talk about, the virus, etc. And what is very important is that this nanoparticle capsule, if it is, for example, exposed to certain temperatures, it can assemble. Remember, even Bill Gates and now even Fauci was caught saying, and self-assembling nanoparticles will really help this vaccine technology, or when we mess around with these self-assembling nanoparticles. Well, self-assembly means, they will develop into the things that I see, that you can see behind me. It's very important that people understand how it works together.
Yeah, and this is from Pfizer's submission to the FDA. So this is their June 15th, 2022 submission, the description of what's in the vaccine. I just want to be clear. It is the nucleoside modified messenger RNA, which is mod RNA, it's not mRNA, encoding the viral spike glycoprotein, which we're going to say, I'll show you, that's the graphene oxide quantum dot synthetic pathogen, and it's formulated in lipid particles, lipid nanoparticles. The term lipid, by the way, it used to not be lipid, it was just engineered. Now, the engineered nanoparticles mimic cholesterol in your body, they mimic fats, but they are not fats. So it's, here's Pfizer saying we're going to reverse engineer the spike protein and incorporate it into nanoparticles. And here's EcoHealth talking with the US military saying, how are we going to create an aerosolized pathogen, a weapon? We're going to take the spike protein and incorporate it into nanoparticles. I don't know why people aren't getting the jump here. It's the same words. And then this is Pfizer's internal structural biological drug design document. It's from Groton, Connecticut, their headquarters for research and development. I have Substacks on this, and you and I have gone through this before, and I've done many interviews on it. But they explain how they infect human embryonic kidney cells called expectethymine that carry a positive ionic charge. They infect them with this non-human DNA and human DNA. They extract it using Vitrobot, and then it's when these new genetic organisms, which are normally would die almost instantly, they're automatically applied to a gold quantifoil and graphene oxide mesh overlay. That's 1 atom thick. And then using cryo, they're frozen. And so these are now cryoed new life forms, cryoorganisms. The same way a woman has her eggs cryoed, or you would have an embryo cryoed, meaning that it's frozen to, again, like 90 negative degrees Celsius in literally nanoseconds. That's a viable life form once it's in the right environment. Once it's warmed up and it's in the right environment, now you have a new viable life form. That's what these are.
And what I just want to say, a lot of people are claiming that what we see in the blood is graphene oxide. You cannot see graphene oxide. It is
an atom thick.
Yeah, it's an atom thick. It's a monoatomic layer. It is the hydrogel that self-assembles. It contains graphene, but you cannot see that. So that's just nonsense. And for people to say, oh, we have the new solution just for the graphene, it's going to clean up the blood, that in itself doesn't make any sense, because you're cleaning up the hydrogels, and we don't know what's happening on the nanoscale.
Yeah, and I think the quantum dots can be as small as 6 nanometers, but I think they can be as large as at least 30 nanometers. So that's maybe when they get to be larger, you're seeing, or once they start coagulating or congregating, people might be seeing the blinking, which might be the quantum dots that they're seeing, right?
And there are polymer coated particles that can be up to 500 nanometers. So we're getting much closer to what we can see.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know, and I don't know if the quantum dots congregate or not. But this is just an article that explains that, look, when you're using cryo-electron microscopy and Vitrobot and you're overlaying proteins with it, they actually incorporate with one another. It's beyond absorption. They actually integrate with one another, and there's literally hundreds of studies on all of this stuff. And then I just wanted to point out, there's hundreds of studies, but this is just one from 2021. The concept of a graphene oxide quantum dot mRNA, injection is not bizarre. This is from 2020, where they basically talk about how what I've been saying for 3 years now is that the mRNA naked mRNA is very unstable. It's unable to get into a cell membrane. Right, it's impossible. It'll disintegrate. The body will kill it. Plus the fact it needs to have a positive ionic charge in order to penetrate that cell membrane. Where is it getting that positive charge from? From the quantum dots, from the graphene oxide quantum dot. That's how it's getting it. So this just is another pretty simple article that you can read about this technology that Pfizer is using in their mRNA injections. So again, this isn't. I guess it's not conspiracy theory. And then if you still don't believe that Pfizer, manufactures their spike protein and it's a graphene oxide quantum dot that can host an electromagnetic field, here's another article about how the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein is vulnerable to moderate electronic fields because it's not biological. It literally will change its shape based on the electromagnetic frequency. So it'll go to an elongated shape or back to the triangular shape. And depending on what the shape is, and the charge of it depends on whether or not it can penetrate the cells. So,
just real quick, because this totally confirms my research, I just have to interject. So, Clifford Carnicum and I, we isolated what he calls cross-domain bacteria. I now believe that these are actually quantum dot-like structures exactly in a hydrogel capsule, and he showed that a low-level electrical current of 10 milliamps over 2 hours in unvaccinated blood will transform that blood into these filamental structures, absolutely. So what this is clearly saying is people need to be careful with things like TENS units, electrical currents. We know that these quantum dots, they can harvest energy also from magnetic fields, pulse electromagnetic fields, and a lot of these anti-nano devices. I mean, I've looked at a lot of stuff under the microscope, and I think that people need to be really careful with that stuff.
Wow. Yeah, I think the best thing people can do is be aware of this and figure out ways to start detoxing. And I know a very inexpensive thing to do is to fast and just, and I saw an article even saying Food grade hydrogen peroxide with some water is good while you're fasting. You know, we know the methylene blue, and I know you know the EDTA, but like even just fasting, like stop feeding this system. You know,
and one of the reasons why fasting works is because all the food supply is contaminated. So especially if you're eating meat, you know, you're gonna get recontaminated. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is just another article. This was from my first time I reported on this, that hydrogel is made of graphene oxide. And so this is just a very early article. What year is this? Oh no, it's 2021. I thought it was earlier than that. Again, this was all done under cancer research. So that's why there was nearly $5 trillion under the Bo Biden moonshot cancer research under the Cures Act. And again, if you go into PubMed and Google, or not Google, search in PubMed graphene oxide hydrogel, you'll find hundreds and hundreds. So I hope people will stop denying that graphene oxide is in all of this stuff, because that's, you know, part of what you want to focus on. I think still that you do want to figure out what would bind to it, what would decontaminate it. And, you know, I default to experts such as you in regards to that. One of the things I wanted to point out is that typically a virus here, do I have it here? Okay, so a white blood cell is 21 micrometers. And where is the nano? There's 1,000 nanometers in 1 micrometer. So think about how small these are. I can't even do the math, but it's like 1/10,000th or 100,000th the size of even just your white blood cell, you know? And so what the scientists did, and viruses are typically micrometers in length as well, is, you know, they took these living organisms or pathogens, and viruses are considered innate DNA until they're brought to life, so they're basically parasitic. But once they take them down to the nano size, they're able to go anywhere throughout the body. So they took something that typically would be pretty benign that your body could fight off, or it wouldn't even enter, you know, into your system, and they turned it into a weapon of mass destruction within your body, which is why people are seeing the quote unquote spike protein, which is also a misnomer, right? They're seeing the graphene oxide hydrogel quantum dots throughout the brain, even as deep as the hippocampus, is what you were saying, because the way our body's made is normally viruses can't even get to the brain. Like it's so encapsulated and sealed. It's very difficult to do for anything to actually get into the human brain to actually cause damage. So I think you would agree with that, right? I mean, it's not typical, to get a brain infection or encephalitis.
One way to think about these nanomaterials is they're so small that they act like a gas. It literally is so small. If you think about, you know, if you were on the Empire State Building on the top floor on the tip, and you look down and there's like this little tiny car driving around, I mean, the proportions are just so huge, exactly what you're saying. So penetrating through a cell wall, a nanoparticle can do that as if it wasn't even there, as if it was air.
Yeah, we're talking about quantum mechanics at this point, you know, I think, and that's difficult for the human mind to comprehend. I mean, even when you go through the Pfizer, how they created the spike protein, they try to get down to something called absolute zero, because allegedly at absolute zero, literally your things are frozen in time. So electrons stop moving, they stop becoming subjective to the observer effect. And no one has gotten down to absolute zero. I saw a study that they got down to 1/10 billionth of a percentage to absolute zero, but they actually can move electrons around using like an AI technology called Relion and COOT and stuff. So again, you see, we're playing God, and we're talking about things at the atomic realm, and it's very dangerous, because what's very disturbing is, because of the size that they're nanoparticles, they're completely blind to the human eye. They're highly dangerous. They can be very deadly. They can be they can cause a lot of chaos. But for some reason, the FDA decided, because they're so small and there's such a small amount of them in any product, they said, we're not going to regulate them. But because they're so small and there's such a small amount, And then that's why they're so dangerous, and they should be highly, highly regulated, more regulated than even our food supply, to be honest.
And this is why this whole aspect of dual use really comes in, because nanotechnology is really the preferred weapon for this day and age, and swarming and self-replication that's non-controllable. I mean, this is worse than the atomic bomb. But because so much of these nanotechnology projects were in the Black Project, this is one of the aspects why the dangers were never discussed in the public literature, and we need to demand that.
Yeah, and Anna, I just want to say what you just said, that these are a greater threat than the atomic bomb. That was validated by James Clapper, who was an advisor to the intelligence community under Clinton, where he said these nanoparticle and gene editing technologies are a greater threat to humanity than a nuclear bomb. So they are considered as weapons of mass destruction and disruption. They are WMDs. So this is a patent I shared literally on Stu Peters in 2021 when I first was on there, and it got poo-pooed, but I want to bring it back up because this is so important. It doesn't say graphene oxide in any of the patents, in the US patents that I could find. But what's interesting is Shanghai Nanotech filed a patent in 2020, and this is a title, Nanocoronavirus Recombinant Vaccine Taking Graphene Oxide as a Carrier, right? So the whole point was to use graphene oxide as a delivery platform for the mRNA technology inoculations. And I showed you that one of the earlier studies from 2021, there's an mRNA graphene oxide platform. And why this is important is because Pfizer's key manufacturing partners are out of China, including WuXi Biologics, Sinobiological, Sinopec, and Fosun Pharma. So I have another presentation on graphene oxide, which is that the US does regulate the amount of graphene oxide that can be in products, but there's a loophole that if you import a product from a foreign country and you use it and it has graphene oxide in it already, and then you add it as part of one of the ingredients to another product, you don't have to disclose it.
Oh my God.
That's from the
terrible.
Graphene Oxide Institute. I binged watched this graphene oxide stuff on some university channel one night. Yeah. So that's how it's getting in here. It's being done by non-US manufacturers, who, by the way, as we know, like China, they have to, if they're forced to partner with the People's Liberation Army, they have to. So these are neural weapons and nano weapons. This is another patent on the nanoparticle technology, and I just wanted to point out that yes, these are neuroweapons. It talks about this is a hydrogel nanoparticle, and it talks about that they can have nanoprobes. The cages I can talk about. I have a different presentation on that, but that prior they did not cross the blood-brain barrier. That's what BBB stands for. But with this new technology, the new hydrogel graphene oxide technology, they're able to cross the blood-brain barrier. And it says right here, in some embodiments, one or more types of agents can get into the central nervous system in 30 minutes or less, and in other embodiments, it can occur in 30 minutes or more. So these were designed to cross the central nervous system and cross the blood-brain barrier.
And I just want to mention, I see a lot of patients who are vaccine injured from shedding. They are unvaccinated, but they're having vaccine-like injury symptoms. And I have patients who literally, in getting in contact with vaccinated individuals, will develop seizure-like activity, etc., within a couple hours. And it's just interesting because if we're inhaling, for example, whatever is emitting these nanoparticles from the injected, which continue to self-replicate, and that can affect women and people in general. But for example, the other thing to consider was how so many women were so rapidly having hemorrhaging, when coming in contact with this. I mean, this stuff can penetrate any organ system, including the brain. You see within 30 minutes. That's just unbelievable, but it's true.
Yeah. I have a whole nother presentation on how it attacks the female reproductive system, and but I just was focusing on the CNS now, but because I think that's what it's important for people to know, that time is critical. because if our thoughts, our processes, our memories, our emotions are being attacked, then time is critical before we can even function to have the strength, the cognitive strength, and the emotional strength to stand up, right? We really need to stop this attack sooner than later, the neuroweapon attack. So this is from the FDA's meeting with all manufacturers on October 20th, 2020, before they rolled out the COVID-19 injections. And I just want to point out that 1/3 of them, these are all neurological disorders. Guillain-Barré, is paralysis. Encephalomyelitis is swelling of the spinal of the brain and the myelin sheath. Convulsions, seizures, stroke, narcolepsy. So I just wanted to point that out. And there's also the demyelinating disease. Where is that?
Yeah.
Where is it? Am I looking at it? It's somewhere here. I don't know where it is. Do you see it? Demyelinating disease is on here too, somewhere. I don't know why I'm not seeing it, but that's eating away the myelin sheath of your nerve cells.
Yep.
So again, these are neural weapons. They're not, and I think that's really important. And then I've shown this before, but I think this is a really powerful patent to share. It's always gotten a lot of gasps when I showed it. The title of the patent is Vaccine Nanotechnology. I'm not showing it here. It was filed by the United States government and the National Institutes of Health in January of 2017. It was granted. And it says right here, the vaccine nanotechnology, in some embodiments, the toxin is from a chemical weapon, an agent of biowarfare.
Or a hazardous environmental agent. I mean, that's just terrible. It's absolutely the fact that a vaccine and biological weapon go together. And it's like people should be outraged about this.
Yeah, and I want to, just to make clear, they're absolutely talking about the pegylated lipid nanoparticle technology. I just want to show you from the patent, they're talking about the lipid-based nanoparticles. This isn't some other technology. They're talking about the pegylated lipid polyethylene glycol. You can see the PEG PLGA. It's 180 pages. Go download the patent. You can go through it yourself if you want. Again, these are the pegylated lipids. And then when you take a look at some of the images from the patent of what these lipid stabilized polymers look like, they look like the spike protein, right? Or what we're calling the virus. This is, and it's an immunomodulator agent. This is what we're calling an mRNA vaccine. These are weapons of biowarfare. And again, these are just some other images from the patent. And so I just wanted to end like this, that, when I first came out in 2021, I said, we are at war. And Anna, I'm just honored that you're saying the same thing, that this is a war against humanity. This isn't about, East versus West, democracies versus, authoritarianism. It's an attack on humanity. And this is from Restricted Warfare, which is written by generals from the People's Liberation Army of China. And it says right here, as soon as technological advances may be applied to military goals, they almost immediately seem obligatory, triggering changes or revolutions in the modes of combat. And I want to make it clear that we are in a psychological warfare, that our thoughts control our words control thoughts. And we have been denied the terms such as neurological weapon, biological weapon, nanoparticle technology, nanotechnology, graphene oxide. We have been forbidden from talking about the weapons that are being used against us so that we can't think about what's being used against us. And these generals from China explain that this type of warfare is various forms of warfare which are enhanced and accompanied by information technology. So denying us this information, denying us the words to describe what's being done to us and our children and all of humanity. And the information warfare they talk about is information technology is used to obtain or suppress information. And that's what's happening on is, Anna, our research, your research, my research is being suppressed. And what's the narrative that's going on, I think, telling people that this is a vaccine go wrong, telling people that these are gene editing therapies that shouldn't have been used, that is deceptive. These are weapons of biowarfare for the purposes of the extermination of the human species and to enslave us. And I don't know why if people could use those words and understand that, I think this would stop very quickly. I'm going to stop sharing if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. And I also think it is so important. We started with this brain-computer interface, and this technology is very complex. And this is, what I've been explaining, and in so many different ways. You've written so many Substack articles, as have I. I think I've reached over 600 now. And how many different ways can we say it to explain to people this is how these areas are correlated? The reason why, I was recently looking at one of our Maria Z interviews where we were talking about the war on the soul and the spirit as well, because that's what Yuval Harari says. So the reason to control someone's mind and to control their thoughts and emotions is ultimately to create these zombie-like automatons that Yuval Harari is discussing. And so this war is indeed on every level, but it's being waged with technology and information warfare. But the outcome is exactly what you're saying, the end of the human species, but also, what does it do to our spirit and our soul if people are modulated like this? And I think that these are very, very deep questions. So I believe that our fight, I know that both you and I, we consider ourselves soldiers for God, because this is really a war against God's creation.
Oh, absolutely, it is. I believe, as you know, I believe this is an affront to God, that we are not meant to be merged with non-human DNA. But also, as you're talking about losing your soul, right? Is that I don't think there's any man or woman that truly thinks about or understands what it's like to no longer have control of your thoughts. Because whatever you think your worst nightmare is, you cannot imagine the hell that you can be put through if you have no control of your thoughts. And if you have no control of your thoughts, you have no control of your actions. You could do something that is unimaginable in your own, in who you are and who God created you to be. That can be completely taken away from you, and you could become the most demonic, horrific thing ever. I don't think people understand the progression of this neurotechnology. So that's why I showed Charles Lieber's work, where they said, it's input and output. So they said eventually we will just control the thoughts, the actions, of these other biological life forms, of these mice and eventually humans. So we have to wake up and stop this. I don't know how to do it. I wish others would pick up the sword, pick up the torch.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think that, one of the things that I consider myself of bringing to the table, and I know you are too, and this is kind of why I made that comment about I'm so glad you're still alive, that, I know personally what it means to be attacked by a neurological weapon. And I have patients who are what's called targeted individuals who have horrific things done to them. And so I just think that, people need to, again, like you're saying, wake up in the sense that if we don't, and if we do not start speaking about this technology, it really the consequences are unfathomable. And one of the quotes that I always give is by Igor Smirnov, who was a scientist who worked for the Russians for the psychotronic research projects, and he was discussing how any electromagnetic frequency, any radio wave can be actually manipulated via information, and that any Satan can take advantage of that to control humanity's mind, and that is truly why this weapon should be feared. So I think that we we continue to expose this. We have done quite a bit of it, and we continue to have these conversations. But what the invitation really is to the people is, look at this, look at the amount of information, look at the fact that Karen is validating what I've been seeing in people's blood, what I've been researching, and that this is not a conspiracy theory, but truly scientifically planned for so long. And anyways, I think that hopefully this is useful for people. Please share it everywhere, because those people who don't believe in this, at least if they still believe in science, then here is your evidence that everything that we've been saying for these last few years is absolutely true.
Absolutely. And I think the neuroweapon aspect of it too is that, you and I, because of our knowledge that we have, we were aware that we were under attack of a neuroweapon, and I was very honest about that too. And I was aware that I was not emotionally and cognitively myself. I was very much aware of that, but it didn't change the fact of what I was experiencing and feeling. I just knew that it wasn't reality. But if you're not aware of it, you think that's your reality. You think this, or you're not even aware of the fact that you've changed as a person, that you're acting strange or paranoid or short with people or hostile or depressed, sleeping 20 hours a day. You're not aware of that. You're just thinking, oh, I guess I'm not feeling well, or maybe this is stress. And that's another important part. Again, by not telling people that these neuroweapons are out there, they've been exposed to them. They're also, as you know, they can also be generated from a smartphone. That is true. Then people aren't aware of the fact that they have something that they can fight against. They're just kind of this victim of this tribal mentality. But the tribal mentality is like we're just following the dodos off the cliff.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And again, speaking from personal experience, one of the reasons how I found out about EDTA is I saved my own life with these infusions. This is why I can tell people about, what to do, is because of the horrific shape that I was in, and I had to save my own life because no doctor knew. And it was EDTA and vitamin C infusions, and I used methylene blue, and I regenerated my own brain that had verifiably aged by 3 decades in a month.
Wow.
So, and the hippocampus was absolutely attacked. I mean, I couldn't read or write. And so I know what a neuroweapon is. And I just want to tell, there's a lot of unkindness out there. And I would say to people, it's like, look, you're looking at 2 warriors who are still standing after some major attacks, and they're still fighting for the human species. I hope you have some respect.
Thank you. Yeah. If they knew what we knew, they would be doing the same thing we're doing. I don't think people know what's being done. I really
No,
don't.
I absolutely do not think so. And I hope people don't have to go through what we went through. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much, and it's always an honor. And tell people, where can they find more about your work?
Oh, thank you. KarenKingston.substack. You can find me there. You can find Anna's work there. And you can find my work on Anna's Substack. And
That sounds good. And promise me you will come back and we'll continue this conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll talk about women next time.
Okay, so be that. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and thanks so much. Please share this information. It could save somebody's life. Thank you. Thank you for watching this episode of Truth, Science, and Spirit with Dr. Anna Mihalcea. If you would like to learn more about my research, you can find it on my Substack, and that is Anna Mihalcea, MD, PhD.substack.com. If you would like to find out more about my book that has won 3 different awards in the category of alternative medicine, called Light Medicine, A New Paradigm, The Science of Light, Spirit, and Longevity, you can find that at arthemasophiapublishing.com. If you're interested in the True Blue Medical Blue Light Wellness Wraps, of which I am the founder, you can find this at truebluemedical.com. Also, if you are interested in becoming a patient or in the Goliath laser, you can contact AM Medical LLC, my clinic, and the website is ammedicalmd.com. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.